Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kira Steger. Kira Steger was born on November 19, 1982 in Des Plaines, Illinois, to parents Marcy and Jay Steger. They remembered her as a vibrant, dedicated, and kind-hearted person. At the time of her disappearance, Kira worked at two stores in the Mall of America, Wet Seal and Delia's. Her co-workers were not only close friends but also like family to her. Kira had a remarkable ability to recognize people's hidden strengths and had a promising future ahead of her. However, her life took a tragic turn when she mysteriously vanished on February 21, 2013. On the day she disappeared, Kira had a shift at work and was looking forward to a dinner date with her husband, Jeffrey Trevino, at a nice restaurant after her shift ended. Kira and Jeffrey had met 3 years prior and quickly fell in love, eventually getting married. To those around them, they appeared to be a happy and stable couple, with only occasional disagreements that they kept private. Neither their relatives, friends, nor co-workers were aware of any significant issues in their relationship. On Saturday, February 23rd, Kira's co-workers became concerned when she failed to show up to work. She was known for being punctual, strict, and adhering to her schedule. When they couldn't reach Kira, they called her husband Jeffrey. According to Jeffrey, Kira had left their house the previous morning and hadn't returned. While this wasn't entirely unusual, as Kira would occasionally spend the night at a friend's or relative's house without warning, the severe snowstorm that day was a cause for concern. Jeffrey speculated that Kira's car might have gotten stuck and her phone battery could have died, leaving her unable to communicate. Jeffrey filed a missing persons report for his wife Kira after not hearing from her, and he also contacted her family to inform them of her disappearance. Her family was shocked and deeply disturbed by the news. Upon receiving the report, detectives launched an investigation into Kira's disappearance. As is standard procedure, they began by questioning Jeffrey and searching the surrounding area. Detectives visited Jeffrey at his home to ask him about Kira's disappearance. He told them that on the previous Thursday, he and Kira had spent time together, having dinner, talking, bowling, and then leaving the mall. According to Jeffrey, they went straight home after that, where Kira planned to watch a movie. Jeffrey also reported that Kira left their house the following Friday morning around 8:30 a.m. to attend a mandatory work event. He stated that Kira was acting normally and didn't appear to be behaving strangely before she left. Jeffrey wasn't concerned about Kira's frequent disappearances, despite not knowing her whereabouts. They had minor relationship issues, but Jeffrey didn't consider them serious. When questioned, he dismissed the possibility of Kira having a lover, citing a previous conversation where she denied it. Jeffrey claimed to trust and love his wife. Investigators relayed information to patrol units and visited the Mall of America to verify Jeffrey's testimony. The Mall of America in Bloomington is one of the largest shopping malls in the world. As such, the mall is equipped with multiple security cameras. Detectives investigated Kira's disappearance by reviewing the footage from the time she left work on February 21st. The footage showed nothing unusual. Jeffrey's account was confirmed, as the footage showed that he met Kira after work, and they spent time together at the mall before leaving. There were no signs of arguments or trouble. Kira's family was struggling with her disappearance, and their anxiety grew as the days passed. They decided to take action and travel to Bloomington to help with the investigation. They created flyers with her picture and posted them around town, hoping to attract attention to the search. The investigators questioned neighbors and obtained footage from a security camera that partially captured Kira and Jeffrey's home. Kira's cell phone records also became available, revealing a significant new lead. A man named Ryan Wendt, a manager at a store where Kira worked, with whom she had a long-term and intense relationship. Police investigated Ryan after learning he'd traveled out of state during Kira's disappearance, raising suspicions due to his past romantic relationship with her and their concurrent out-of-state moves. detectives sought to determine whether his actions were coincidental or incriminating. The detectives managed to locate Ryan in Colorado and asked him to answer questions. During the questioning, Ryan stated that he had last been in contact with Kira via text messages while driving through South Dakota. He said these messages were sent shortly before Kira disappeared. The police analyzed the timing of these messages and discovered that Kira had been texting with Ryan while she was having dinner with Jeffrey. It was clear that Kira was distancing herself from Jeffrey. The investigators examined Ryan's phone and credit card records to verify his location. Their analysis indicated that Ryan was indeed out of state that evening and had no connection to Kira's disappearance. Based on this information, Ryan was eliminated as a suspect. Further analysis of the messages revealed that Kira had been texting with Ryan even after she returned home with Jeffrey. However, her phone activity ceased at 11:44 p.m., and she has not been active since. A team of investigators reviewed video footage from a surveillance camera at Kira's neighbor's house. The camera's rapid movement made it difficult to observe, but it did capture Jeffrey and Kira's house for a few seconds. According to Jeffrey, they returned home after dinner and bowling, watched a movie, and went to bed. However, the footage showed Kira's car backing into the yard at 2 a.m. and driving away, despite the poor video quality and constant motion. Jeffrey claimed he drove to the gas station to fill up Kira's car, as she had asked him to do before her commute the next day. His alibi checked out, as he was indeed seen at the gas station around 3:30 a.m. However, after leaving the gas station, he didn't return home. Instead, he headed towards the highway, but his exact destination is unknown. Although a neighbor's camera didn't capture him returning home, it's possible he may have arrived when the camera was facing a different direction. Kira's Chevrolet was seen leaving her residence at 9:21 a.m., but the driver's identity couldn't be determined. A missing person report was filed on February 23rd. On February 25th, police received a call about a suspicious vehicle near Kira's workplace. The vehicle had been parked in a multi-story parking lot for several days and was found with suspicious red smudges on the trunk lid. Kira's white Chevy was found with signs of a tragic event, including a few small bloodstains. Her purse, containing divorce court forms, was recovered from the vehicle. A rolled-up trunk mat with dark stains, later confirmed to be her blood, was discovered behind the car. The car left the house at 9:21 a.m. and was captured on camera at the mall 20 minutes later. Unfortunately, there was no camera in the parking lot where the car was eventually found, but there was a camera that captured footage of the path leading to the car. After reviewing the footage, detectives noticed a man wearing a hoodie, which was not unusual given the cold weather, walking after the car had entered the parking lot. The man crossed the street and approached a taxi stand, where he had a brief conversation with a driver before getting into the car and driving off. The police were able to identify the taxi company and determine which car the man had ridden in by tracking the time of the interaction. Since the cabs were equipped with GPS tracking devices, the police were able to determine that the man ended his trip a block away from Kira and Jeffrey's house and paid for the ride in cash before getting out of the car. As the cab drove away from the neighborhood, it was caught on camera by the same surveillance camera that had partially captured Kira and Jeffrey's residence. 2 minutes later, a man wearing a hoodie with a distinctive white logo entered the camera's frame. Although the poor video quality made it hard to discern his face, investigators suspected that the man was likely Jeffrey, given that Kira was missing and the man with the hooded sweatshirt was seen entering Kira and Jeffrey's house. Law enforcement officers executed a search warrant and visited the house, finding numerous dark red stains in the bedroom, including nearly 100 on the mattress. After rearranging and cleaning the room, investigators used luminol to reveal additional stains on the carpet that were not visible to the naked eye. The stains, which originated in the bedroom, were confirmed to be Kira's blood, leading investigators to believe she was likely no longer alive. A search of Jeffrey's car found no blood or signs of a struggle, but a gas station receipt indicated a purchase was made with his card 1 hour and 40 minutes before Kira's car was abandoned. Detectives went to the gas station to review the security footage. The footage showed Jeffrey filling up his car and then going inside to withdraw cash from an ATM. This gave them a clear view of Jeffrey's face and revealed a logo on his jacket that matched the one seen on the man in the earlier footage. Based on this new evidence and the evidence found at the house, 39-year-old Jeffrey Trevino was arrested. He was taken to the police station for questioning and became the main suspect. Jeffrey contacted his attorney during the interrogation and was advised to remain silent. The police had enough evidence to charge him, but needed to find Kira's body to prove his guilt. After months of searching by the police, Kira's family and volunteers, a suspicious bag was found by the side of the road at Keller Lake, near Trevino's house, as the snow began to melt in late March. A bag containing a bloodied pillow, shirt, and bra was discovered, and forensic analysis revealed that the items had Kira's DNA on them. Although the search of the lake was hindered by the presence of ice, divers searched the water body, but unfortunately, no remains were found. The area around the lake was also thoroughly searched using 4 trained search dogs, but these efforts were unsuccessful. 2.5 months after Kira's disappearance, a disturbing call on May 8, 2013, led police to a body in the Mississippi River. Body was identified through dental records as Kira Steger, with severe blunt force trauma and a fractured index finger, making her exact cause of death impossible to determine due to decomposition. To uncover the truth, investigators worked to rebuild the sequence of events surrounding Kira's death. Their theory was as follows. When Kira and Jeffrey arrived home, he discovered that she was texting someone else, which made him suspicious. Kira refused to let him see the messages, leading Jeffrey to violently take her phone and break her finger in the process. Upon reading the romantic messages, Jeffrey's anger intensified, ultimately driving him to kill Kira. After committing the crime, he attempted to erase any evidence of his wrongdoing. Jeffrey used Kira's car to transport her body to a house, where he put it in the trunk. He then stopped at a gas station before driving to a river, where he disposed of the body. On his way back home, he threw away a bag containing Kira's pillow and clothes. The next day, he went to a gas station to withdraw cash from an ATM, knowing he would need it to pay for a taxi after abandoning Kira's car in a mall parking lot. After getting rid of the car, Jeffrey returned home and spent the rest of the day cleaning the house. Jeffrey's goal was to make it seem like Kira had driven away from her car on her own that morning and was unharmed. However, surveillance footage foiled his plan. In October 2013, a jury found Jeffrey Trevino guilty, agreeing that his actions were not planned in advance, but rather the result of a heated argument that escalated into violence after he discovered Kira's infidelity. Jeffrey Trevino was sentenced to 27.5 years in prison in November 2013. He will be eligible for parole in 2031. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Shannon Monty. Shannon Monty was born on April 6, 1997. When she was a young child, her parents immigrated to the United States and settled in Waukesha, Wisconsin, where she grew up and attended school. Her parents thought Waukesha was an ideal place to raise their children because of its friendly atmosphere and good schools. Shannon was a bright, attractive, and outgoing person who made friends easily. After graduating from high school in 2015, Shannon enrolled at the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee. She was interested in social work and wanted to help people in need. Despite her busy schedule, she worked part-time at an organic food company with her father. It was there that she met Quentin Neal, a 26-year-old man who shared her passion for helping others. They bonded quickly over their similar values and interests. Shannon had always dreamed of building a shelter for women and children, and Quentin was equally committed to making a positive impact. As their friendship blossomed into romance, they decided to live together. Shannon was thrilled to have found someone like Quentin, who cared deeply for her and made their relationship a happy and fulfilling one. Shannon's parents were making plans with her for their future together until her sudden disappearance. On April 13, 2018, Shannon failed to pick up her younger brother from school and didn't show up for work, which was unusual for her. Her phone was found to be turned off, and she had not informed anyone that she would be missing her shift. Her parents went to the police station the same day, unable to locate their daughter on their own. Initially, detectives thought that Shannon, being young, might have simply run away with friends or taken a spontaneous trip. However, her parents quickly dismissed this idea, as it was out of character for Shannon to cut off contact and ignore her family's worry. Shannon's mother provided crucial details to the investigators, which led them to take the case more seriously and pursue it further. Shannon's room still contained some of her money, documents, and valuables, which was a concerning factor in her disappearance. When questioned, Shannon's parents revealed that her boyfriend was 27-year-old Quentin Neal. When investigators contacted Quentin by phone, he claimed to have no knowledge of Shannon's whereabouts. Shannon had been living with her parents, and Quentin said he hadn't seen Shannon that day. The investigators asked Quentin to come to the police station for questioning. Quentin appeared anxious and agreed to come immediately. When he arrived, Shannon's parents were still present. Quentin told the investigators that the last time he saw Shannon was over 24 hours ago, when she left his house to pick up her little brother from school. The investigators asked Quentin if he knew where Shannon might be, but he didn't have any idea. However, he did remember that another man had been interested in Shannon, despite knowing she was in a relationship and pregnant. According to Quentin, this man continued to pursue Shannon even after she told him to leave her alone. The next day, the police began interviewing Shannon's friends to gather more information. They also distributed details about the search for Shannon to all police stations in Wisconsin. Later that day, they found a disturbing discovery that Shannon's car was found in Milwaukee, about 20 minutes from her home. Forensic investigators thoroughly examined the car but found no signs of a crime, such as a carjacking or struggle. Shannon's purse and phone were missing, but they did find fingerprints from 3 people: Shannon, Quentin, and an unknown individual. The man mentioned by Quentin was brought in for questioning. He claimed to be distraught over Shannon's disappearance, but denied Quentin's allegations, saying they were merely friends and never pursued a romantic relationship. However, a significant break in the case came when Anshuman, Shannon's mother, found Shannon's Apple Watch and reviewed Shannon's text messages. She took the watch to the police station, allowing investigators to examine it further. The investigators discovered that Quentin and Shannon had arranged to meet on the day she went missing, contradicting Quentin's earlier statement. The text messages also revealed that Quentin had been abusive towards Shannon, although she was pregnant with his child. Quentin had apologized for his behavior and begged her not to leave him. The investigators suspected Quentin was not a good person due to his criminal history, including a prison sentence for robbery and multiple arrests for assault and minor offenses. Shannon's parents had become increasingly suspicious of him as they noticed their daughter was often depressed. Quentin's emotional instability regarding the baby Shannon was expecting only added to their concerns. After Shannon told her parents about the pregnancy, they met with Quentin, who promised to care for both Shannon and the baby. However, Shannon's mother later discovered severe bruising on her daughter's arms and learned that Quentin was responsible for the injuries. When Shannon's cell phone was last detected near Quentin's residence on April 13th, the investigators became worried they might not find her alive. They quickly obtained a search warrant and searched Quentin's house, but initially found no signs of a crime scene or struggle, as the place was clean and appeared normal. Forensics investigators used luminol on the first floor, but it revealed no evidence. However, when they applied it to the basement, they found numerous traces, strongly suggesting that Shannon was likely deceased. Quinton Neal was subsequently arrested and taken into custody. Before questioning him, investigators analyzed his phone records, discovering that he had recently searched online for ways to remove evidence of a crime using a certain chemical. He was apparently trying to conceal his involvement. During the interrogation, Quinton repeatedly denied any knowledge of Shannon's whereabouts and claimed to have no connection to her disappearance. The investigators finally had concrete evidence, which led Quinton to change his story. He eventually agreed to confess to the crime, but he claimed he acted in self-defense when he took Shannon's life. Quinton explained that Shannon had visited his house to discuss their future and their child. However, the conversation turned into an argument, and Shannon went into the kitchen. She picked up a knife and gun stored there for emergencies. According to Quinton, Shannon then threatened him, prompting him to act quickly. The two got into a physical altercation, which ultimately ended in Shannon's death. Quinton stressed to the investigators that he had only defended himself. Although they were skeptical due to Quinton's lack of defensive wounds, they continued to listen to his account. Quinton Neal panicked when he realized he had done something irreversible. He hid evidence of the crime in a large suitcase in the basement of his house, where the incident occurred. Later, he led the police to a storage unit 6 miles from his residence, where the suitcase was stored. Inside, detectives found the body of Shannon, Quinton's girlfriend, who was pregnant at the time. Shannon's wrists and ankles were bound with duct tape, contradicting Quinton's claim of self-defense. Forensic experts determined that Shannon died from 2 gunshot wounds to the head and had additional knife wounds on her body. On April 18, 2018, detectives informed Shannon's parents of the devastating discovery. Quinton was subsequently indicted for the murder of Shannon and her unborn child. The evidence gathered, including their correspondence on the day of the incident, was sufficient to secure a guilty verdict. According to the evidence, Shannon had visited Quinton's house to discuss her pregnancy, but an argument ensued, and she never left the house alive. The trial of Quinton Neal was initially set to begin in the spring of 2019, but it was delayed by 3 months due to anonymous letters received by attorneys and court officials just days before the start date. These letters claimed that someone other than Quinton Neal was responsible for Shannon's death. However, when the author of the letters was identified as one of Quinton's friends, who had written them in an attempt to confuse the investigation and help Quinton, the judge ruled that the letters were not relevant. Quinton Neal was facing the possibility of capital punishment and denied the charges against him, claiming he had acted in self-defense. 15 months had passed since Shannon's death, and her family was eager for justice. Before her death, Shannon had been working to support victims of domestic violence and help women and children. Her family had planned to build a shelter home, a dream that was put on hold when Shannon became a victim herself. On July 15, 2019, Quinton Neal accepted a plea deal with investigators, admitting his guilt in the murder of Shannon and her child. As part of the agreement, prosecutors dropped their pursuit of the death penalty. 2 days later, on July 17, 2019, Neal was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences by the Milwaukee County Circuit Court. He will not be eligible for parole, ensuring he will spend the remainder of his life in prison. During his sentencing, Neal remained silent, never explaining his motivations for the crime. Shannon's family expressed relief that justice had been served. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Christina Carlin Craft. Christina Rose Carlin Craft was born on November 11, 1983, in southern New Jersey, to Stuart Craft and Dawn Carlin. From a young age, she enjoyed being in front of the camera, whether it was being photographed or videotaped. After graduating from high school in Linwood in 2000, Christina worked as a waitress in southern New Jersey and later at the Borgata Hotel Casino and Spa in Atlantic City. Although she had a stable job, her true aspiration was to become a model. Christina's determination eventually paid off, and she achieved some success in the modeling industry. In her promotional materials, she expressed her love for posing in elegant lingerie and swimwear. According to Eva Waltz, a friend Christina met while working on a 3-day photo shoot for Maxim magazine, Christina was a charming and beautiful person with a great sense of humor. With her dark hair and blue eyes, she embodied the qualities of a fashion model. Christina's ultimate goal was to appear on the cover of Playboy. In 2003, while still working as a waitress at the Borgata Casino, Christina met Alex Caiatelli, and they soon began dating. Alex supports Christina's ambitions and never hindered her career. They got engaged after a long relationship. During this time, Christina became Cyber Girl of the Month in May 2009, earning an invitation to the Playboy Mansion, where she attended exclusive events and experienced luxury. At the height of her career, Christina's ambitions soared, particularly after meeting Hugh Hefner. Unfortunately, despite her efforts, she failed to secure a modeling contract with Playboy magazine, a highly competitive opportunity that only one girl among thousands of applicants can attain. Christina faced significant obstacles in becoming a top model at that time. One major issue was her age. At 26, she was considered too old for certain magazines that typically feature younger models. Despite this, she continued to work hard, landing jobs with prominent companies like Redken, Maxim, Victoria's Secret, and Vanity Fair. Determined to advance her career, Christina moved to New York with her boyfriend Alex. However, her decision to pose for Playboy proved to be a setback. Many brands were hesitant to work with her after the explicit photo shoot, and her career began to decline. Eventually, it came to a complete halt. It was a challenging time for Christina, but she was grateful to have Alex's support to help her through it. Christina was a woman known for both her physical beauty and her controversial behavior. In 2016, she caused a disturbance at the Smith, a New York restaurant. Following the incident, the New York Post published several articles about what had happened. According to law enforcement sources and court documents, Christina Carlin Craft, 34, was dining at the Smith with a male friend on March 6 when an argument broke out over the bill. The man refused to pay, and the manager, Sergei Anikin, intervened. Christina, who was reportedly intoxicated, claimed the manager had pushed her, but a video of the incident showed that was not true. During the altercation, Christina allegedly hit a police officer on the neck, causing redness and significant pain. She was subsequently charged with misdemeanor assault, attempted assault, and harassment. However, after the district attorney offered her a deal, the charges were dropped on the condition that she stayed out of trouble for 6 months. Christina's lawyer explained that she accepted a reasonable deal offered by the district attorney. Christina had always been fond of Philadelphia, particularly Ardmore, where she felt a strong sense of safety. Considering this, Alex purchased an apartment for her in Ardmore, and they of them relocated to Pennsylvania in 2018. However, Christina soon discovered that Ardmore did not live up to her expectations of being a safe haven. In fact, on August 18, 2018, she reported a robbery to the police. Christina spent the evening at a bar in Philadelphia, but her memories of the night are hazy. The next morning, she woke up with no recollection of how she got home or if anyone was with her. She suspected that someone had drugged her with illegal substances. Feeling scared, she confided in others about her concerns. Her partner, Alex, was away on a business trip at the time, which added to her anxiety. The police investigation into the incident uncovered CCTV footage that showed a car arriving at Christina's apartment building around 3 a.m. The footage revealed that Christina was unconscious in the back seat. The driver, who was later identified as the perpetrator, took Christina's keys from her purse and entered her apartment. Once inside, the thief stole over $50,000 worth of valuables, including jewelry, designer handbags, sunglasses, a credit card, and personal documents. The perpetrator spent about an hour and a half in Christina's apartment before returning to the car. He then helped Christina out of the vehicle and into her apartment building, leaving her in the hallway. The thief put the keys back in Christina's purse and drove away, leaving her disoriented and frightened. The police were able to identify the perpetrator of the robbery with the help of a credit card statement. The culprit was Andre Melton, a man with a prior criminal record. At the time of the robbery, Melton was driving a rented 2018 Kia Sorento with a Virginia license plate. Witnesses reported seeing the same car near Christina's house on August 17th, a sighting confirmed by police using specialized license plate recognition software. As the police searched for Melton and worked to recover Christina's stolen belongings, a far more serious crime occurred. On August 22, 2018, Alex Cayatelli called the police to ask them to check on his girlfriend, Christina Carlin Craft, as he was unable to contact her. When he arrived home, he found the apartment door locked from the inside. A review of the security system revealed that someone had opened the front door and balcony door overnight. The police were forced to break down the front door to gain entry. Upon entering the apartment, they immediately discovered a crime scene, with a body on the bed covered in a blanket and blood visible. Christina Carlin Craft's brutally beaten body was discovered under a blanket. She had suffered severe injuries, including a broken nose and strangulation marks on her neck. When Christina's identity was confirmed, the news of her death was devastating to Alex. As the police investigated further, they couldn't rule out the possibility that Alex might be involved in her murder. After all, the closest people to the victim are often the prime suspects. Christina and Alex had a long history together, and anything could have happened between them. The fact that Alex had called the police to express his concern about Christina, only to have her body discovered shortly after, raised suspicions. It was possible that Alex had staged his concern to divert attention from himself. The detectives asked him to accompany them to the police station for questioning, and Alex agreed without hesitation. Alex told investigators he had to return to New York for urgent work on August 21st. On August 22nd, at 2:30 a.m., he called Christina to say goodnight, but she didn't answer. Since Christina was always awake at that hour, Alex grew concerned. He called her several more times, but got no response. He then checked the security system and found suspicious activity at the apartment that night. Alex decided to put his business on hold and return to Ardmore immediately. The police believed Alex's story and ruled him out as a suspect, as it was impossible for him to be in two places at once. His alibi checked out, and the police cleared him of any involvement in Christina's death. The main suspect in Christina's murder was initially Andre Melton, who had previously stolen valuables from her apartment. It's possible that he returned to the apartment to steal again, but his plan was foiled when Christina caught him. Alternatively, he may have discovered that she had reported him to the police and sought revenge. On August 22nd, the day Christina's body was discovered, the police obtained an arrest warrant for Andre Melton. When they went to his residence, they found some of Christina's belongings, but Melton was nowhere to be found. However, surveillance footage from the night of the crime revealed that Christina had returned to her apartment with an unknown man at 3:08 a.m., but it wasn't Andre Melton. Further analysis of the footage showed that the unknown man did not leave the apartment. To investigate further, police reviewed CCTV footage from the streets of Ardmore and discovered that Christina had visited a bar in Philadelphia before returning to her apartment. At the bar, investigators found footage of Christina meeting a man who later hugged her, the same man she had returned to her apartment with. Christina and a new acquaintance hailed a taxi after leaving the bar. Detectives tracked her movements to rebuild the timeline of events leading up to her death. They eliminated Melton as a suspect since he wasn't with her that day. They still had to determine if her death was connected to the earlier robbery or just a coincidence. On August 25th, the police got a new lead. Andrew Sanford, the taxi driver who drove Christina and her companion that night. He reported that Christina and her friend had approached him, and they didn't use the taxi app. After agreeing on a fare, they got into the taxi. According to Sanford, the couple seemed affectionate and friendly, so they didn't raise any suspicions. Sanford also remembered that when they arrived at their destination, Christina took the initiative to settle the fare. However, she didn't have any cash on her. She offered to leave her credit card, but Sanford refused. Then, Christina's friend offered him $100 if he would wait 10 to 15 minutes near the house while they went to the apartment. Sanford left 20 minutes later, as neither Christina nor her friend returned. Christina and the man entered their apartment around 3 a.m. At 4 a.m., Christina made a brief call to her cousin, but didn't speak a word. Her cousin, however, heard a man in the background instructing Christina not to call the police. The call ended abruptly, leaving the cousin unclear about what was happening. The police later determined the timeline of the crime using the apartment's door sensors, which recorded the exact times the doors were opened. The data showed that the first door opening occurred at 3:08 a.m. and the next at 5:10 a.m. Since the apartment was on the second floor, the investigators suspected that the perpetrator had left through the sliding glass door on the balcony, which was also detected by the security system around the same time. This explained why the surveillance cameras did not capture the moment when the man Christina met at the bar left the apartment. When the police arrived after Alex's call, they found Christina alone in the apartment. Based on this information, the police theorized that the perpetrator escaped by jumping off the balcony. The investigation's next step was to seek the public's help through the media. After releasing the surveillance camera images, the authorities asked anyone with information to come forward. The photos showed two individuals, Andre Melton and the second person who was at Christina's apartment on the night of her death. Surprisingly, Andre Melton called the police by himself, admitting to stealing from Christina but denying involvement in her murder. On August 26th, the police station received an anonymous call from a man who claimed to know one of the suspects in the recent crime. The caller revealed that he had shared a room with the suspect at a psychiatric clinic in Philadelphia. According to the caller, the suspect had previously assaulted a woman in Love Park and molesting her. The suspect became aggressive, shouting and causing a disturbance, and was eventually hospitalized for 2 hours at a cost of $70. However, he was not identified. The caller provided more chilling information. The suspect had bragged about strangling a woman and felt proud and satisfied by the act. This new information convinced investigators that the suspect was likely responsible for the murder of Christina Carlincraft. The police received another call from a Philadelphia relative of the suspect, who identified the man in the photo as Jonathan Wesley Harris, a convicted felon with a history of robbery. Harris had been released from prison on July 15th, just 5 weeks before Christina's murder. After studying the suspect's entire biography, it became clear that Andre Melton and Jonathan Harris had no prior connection and had never met. As a result, the police ruled out any link between their crimes. Additionally, the police gained access to Harris's phone messages. On August 22nd, he texted a friend that he had met an attractive woman and was going to her apartment. On August 28th, the police obtained an arrest warrant for Jonathan Harris. It was essential to apprehend him as soon as possible, as no one knew what he might do next. However, Harris had left no trail. When investigators contacted Harris's sister on August 29, 2018, she revealed that he had recently purchased a bus ticket to Pittsburgh. As it turned out, Harris was already on the bus when the conversation took place. The Ardor police were unable to act, and the officers wouldn't be able to catch up with him. The Pittsburgh police were their last hope. Timing was crucial, and the police investigating Christina's death contacted the Pittsburgh Law Enforcement Agency for assistance. They informed the task force of the bus's expected arrival time in Pittsburgh and shared a photo of Harris, helping them plan a strategic ambush. The officers blocked off all potential escape routes and were prepared to apprehend the suspect at a moment's notice. As the bus approached, one of the employees spotted Harris and allowed him to disembark calmly, reducing the likelihood of panic or chaotic behavior. About 10 minutes later, a police officer intercepted Harris. Harris gave a false name when asked to identify himself. He was arrested and taken to the police station, where detectives from Philadelphia interrogated him about his involvement in Christina's case. Harris claimed that he met Christina at a bar or nightclub, where she was alone, and he approached her. He admitted to being under the influence of both illegal substances and alcohol at the time. After chatting and having a drink, Christina invited him to her place. Once they arrived, Harris asked the taxi driver to wait, intending to return shortly. However, he ended up staying with Christina, and they drank multiple bottles of wine together. He claimed that they then engaged in an intimate relationship with mutual consent and used a prohibited substance. Afterward, Harris demanded that Christina pay him $1,200, which she refused. The situation escalated into a physical altercation when Christina allegedly hit Harris with a wine bottle. In response, Harris claimed he hit her in the face, causing her to fall to the floor. When Christina attempted to call for emergency assistance, Harris strangled her with sweatpants until she lost consciousness. Despite his account, several inconsistencies were found in his story. During the toxicology examination, experts found no prohibited substances in Christina's body, only alcohol. This contradicted the suspect's initial claim that he had only hit her once. When confronted with the results, Harris admitted to lying. Harris initially tried to convince detectives of his innocence, claiming Christina was fine when he left her apartment. However, during a subsequent interrogation, he fully confessed to his guilt. He explained that he had panicked after severely beating her, leaving her while she was still breathing, and covering her with a blanket to avoid the sight. Ultimately, Jonathan Harris confessed to taking Christina's life and attempting to escape detection by jumping off the balcony. Despite his earlier confession, Harris pleaded not guilty at the trial. Nevertheless, the investigators had gathered substantial evidence, making it impossible for Harris and his lawyer to win the case. The court was expected to sentence Jonathan Harris to 22 to 40 years in prison for the crime of third-degree life deprivation. However, the large amount of evidence presented by the prosecutors convinced the court that the crime was intentional, making life imprisonment a possibility. During the trial, a key witness testified against Harris. This witness had shared a room with Harris at a psychiatric clinic and had previously reported Harris to the police. Harris had confessed to the crime while in the clinic, telling the witness that he enjoyed the feeling of squeezing someone and watching them take their last breath. In the end, Judge William R. Carpenter sentenced Jonathan Wesley Harris to 30 years to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge handed down an additional 22 to 45-year sentence to Harris. The lengthy sentence was intended to send a message to future authorities who might consider granting him early release or pardon. In a separate case, Andre Melton was arrested in December 2018 and charged with burglarizing Carlin Craft's apartment. He was sentenced in March 2020 to 1 to 4 years in prison, followed by 3 years of consecutive probation, totaling 7 years under court supervision. Before receiving his sentence, Melton apologized to Carlin Craft's family. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Marisela Botella Valadez. Maricela Botella Valadez was born in 1997 in Seattle, Washington. As the eldest of two children in a Latin American family, she was known for being a kind, outgoing young woman with many friends. She excelled in school and went on to attend a prestigious university after graduating. Maricela was a stunning young woman with a petite frame, long brunette hair, and big brown eyes. She was always the center of attention and loved being around people, often attending lively parties and making the most of every day. On October 3, 2020, Maricela traveled to Dallas to visit old friends, but she planned to return by Monday morning. Her brother was supposed to pick her up from the airport on October 5th, and they would head to the university together. However, when the plane arrived, Maricela was nowhere to be found. A search for the missing student began when her brother realized she wasn't among the passengers who had disembarked from the flight. He tried to call her, but her phone was turned off. He then contacted their parents to inform them of the situation. Maricela's disappearance was unusual, as she was a responsible and serious young woman who would not normally miss university classes without warning. Maricela's family reached out to her friends in Dallas to gather information about her possible whereabouts and her last known location. Their efforts led them to a popular club in the city, where she was spotted partying with friends the night before her disappearance. While there, she had met a man named Chuck and they had danced and socialized together over drinks. After that, they of them left the club, and Maricela was not seen again. When her family was unable to reach her by phone, they grew extremely concerned and frightened, prompting them to quickly report her disappearance to the police. She had purchased tickets for a flight to Seattle, but she never boarded the plane. Her whereabouts since that night were unknown. To investigate further, it was crucial to identify the new person she had met, their destination, and whether she had left with them voluntarily. Reviewing surveillance footage from outside the club, authorities observed Maricela exiting with a young man, but his face was not clearly visible on the video. According to the footage, Maricela appeared to be walking with a man voluntarily before getting into a black Audi car and driving off in an unknown direction. Several days had passed since her disappearance, and she had not contacted anyone, logged into her social media accounts, or made any transactions on her bank cards. The police urgently needed to identify the stranger she was with to determine where to search for them. One of her friends reported that the companion might be named Chuck, but this information was not enough. However, street camera footage helped investigators determine the direction the car had traveled. Further review of supermarket security footage revealed that they had stopped to shop, appearing happy and affectionate towards each other. The footage showed Maricela selecting drinks and candies, while he paid for the items using a card in the name of Charles Beltran. It became clear that Maricela had left with Beltran, a 31-year-old musician who was gaining popularity as a local rap star. However, Beltran had a troubled past, having been to prison twice for robbery and armed assault. He had been released on parole after serving less than 3 years and was on the verge of releasing his own music album. An investigation revealed that Maricela's phone had been active at a specific location on the night she went missing. The location was linked to a house owned by a woman named Lisa Dyke, who was renting a room to Beltran. When police and an FBI agent investigating Maricela's disappearance visited the house, they found it empty. The police were only able to reach Lisa Dyke by phone, as she said she was out of state for work. She confirmed that Charles Beltran had been renting a room in her home, but claimed he had moved out about 2 weeks ago. She also stated that she had no idea where he was after that. They searched the house where he used to live and made several alarming discoveries. The interior was a disaster zone with mess and unsanitary conditions everywhere. It appeared as if the residents had departed abruptly, only taking essential belongings and abandoning the rest. Dirty dishes were stacked high in the sink, old food and mold sat on the kitchen table, and garbage covered the corners of the floor. In stark contrast, investigators found multiple empty bottles of cleaning supplies scattered around, and there were also remnants on the floor and carpet indicating an attempt to scrub areas clean. A disturbing black statue of death, draped in a black cloak and grasping a scythe, occupied one of the upstairs rooms. While it could have been dismissed as an eccentric decoration, its presentation as a makeshift altar, complete with wax candles, dried flowers, and 2 metal bowls, suggested a more sinister purpose. The setup bore an uncanny resemblance to the Mexican cult of Santa Muerte, which reveres a female embodiment of death. The house exuded an atmosphere of foreboding, as if a traumatic event had occurred, prompting the occupants to hastily gather their belongings and flee in a state of panic. A more thorough investigation was conducted using specialized tools to detect blood traces. This revealed multiple wiped blood stains in one of the bedrooms, the bathroom, and the hallway. The bedroom with the most significant bloodstains belonged to Charles, suggesting a violent crime had occurred there. However, the identity of the victim remained unclear. Despite attempts to clean the area, the blood had penetrated the carpet, seeped under the baseboards, and stained the wallpaper and furniture. To confirm the source of the blood, experts compared the samples with Morella's DNA. The results eliminated any remaining doubts, confirming that the blood belonged to Morella. The police had to seal the house as a crime scene, but their next challenge was to track down the main suspect, potential accomplices, and witnesses. However, this proved to be a difficult task as Charles had already fled the scene, and the owner had quickly put the house up for sale even before the police arrived. To gather more information, the police decided to investigate the people who had recently lived in the house. According to the neighbors, who described a complicated love triangle, 3 individuals had lived in the house: 57-year-old Lisa Dyke, 48-year-old Nina Morano, and 31-year-old Charles Beltran. However, the nature of their relationships and the reason for their sudden disappearance remained unclear. To move forward with the investigation, the police needed to look into each person's background and find them as soon as possible for questioning. The owner of the house, who was the only one reachable by phone, was a well-known lawyer with a commanding and ambitious personality. She had been married 3 times and had inherited a substantial amount of money after becoming a widow several years ago. Given her financial situation, it was unclear why she had rented a room to Charles, as she was not known for her charitable nature, suggesting that she may have had an ulterior motive. Charles Beltran, also known as Chuck, had big dreams of becoming a successful rapper. However, his lack of funds and connections, combined with a troubled past, made it difficult for him to get started. That was until he met Dyke, who offered him a helping hand. She took him in, setting up a small recording studio in her home, and even funded the production of several music videos to help launch his career. Dyke also provided Chuck with a car, paid for his social expenses, and bought him stylish clothing. Despite her significant financial investment in Chuck, Dyke maintained that their relationship was purely professional, insisting that she saw great potential in the young rapper and was simply investing in his future. The situation with Nina Morano was particularly interesting. She had been in a long-term relationship with Lisa, and after Lisa's husband passed away, they women no longer hid their romance. In fact, they had gotten married just a few months prior. Nina moved in with Lisa, who was already living with a young musician named Charles. Although Lisa denied it, a close friend claimed that she had a romantic relationship with Charles, and Lisa had even confided in her friend about how great he was as a lover. It seemed that Lisa was deeply in love with Charles, as evidenced by her efforts to look younger, including losing 55 pounds, changing her image, wearing bright makeup, and getting tattoos. Lisa had also made some significant changes to her life, including evicting her adult children from the home, citing that they were interfering with her personal life. Charles, on the other hand, had a clear interest in staying with Lisa, who was wealthy and could help him financially and advance his music career. However, as a physically attractive man, Charles often engaged in casual flings with young women, which made Lisa extremely jealous. But what was Nina Morano's role in all of this, and specifically, what did she have to do with Morella's disappearance? According to a close friend, Lisa's spouse, Na, was also involved in the unusual love triangle with Lisa and he. Na was a successful lawyer and a wealthy woman. The three of them lived a life of luxury together. After they got married, both women took his last name, Beltran, and the three of them lived together in the house. But what happened to the people who lived in the house where Morella's blood was discovered? After Morella disappeared, no one was seen at home again. Lisa was contacted once and answered a few questions, claiming she was in another state, but her phone was unreachable after that. There was no information about Na's whereabouts or the main suspect, Charles. On the night of October 5th, investigators monitored the mobile phone signals of the three residents and the missing person, Maricela, and found that all four signals were coming from within the house. By early morning, the signals had moved to a remote wooded area in suburban Dallas. Shortly after, the signals vanished. A few days later, Lisa briefly responded to messages on her secondary work phone, but it soon became unreachable as well. Using geolocation data from the mobile devices, authorities reconstructed the group's route that night, identifying the stops they made along the way. This information led them to suspect that the missing student's body might have been disposed of in this area. Although this narrowed down the search radius, the area was vast and challenging to navigate, hindering the progress of the investigation. The search for the missing Seattle student was suspended near the new year, as no body or clues were found. However, in March 2021, a local hunter discovered a human skull in the woods that appeared to be relatively recent. The hunter immediately reported the find to the police, who then sent the remains to a forensic laboratory for examination. Dental records confirmed that the remains belonged to the missing student, who had been gone for nearly 6 months. Although the body was badly decomposed and damaged by wild animals, making it impossible to determine the exact cause of death, forensic analysis revealed characteristic marks on the bones that suggested knife wounds. However, it was unclear whether these wounds were fatal. After the authorities found the body in the forest, they quickly identified the first suspects and tracked down Lisa, who had moved to Florida with her partner, Na. They had rented a house in Miami near the ocean. However, when the police arrived, only Na was apprehended, while Lisa went into hiding after learning about the situation. Charles, another suspect, was nowhere to be found, although he occasionally contacted his former girlfriends through messaging apps. In one of his last messages, Charles warned his acquaintances that the police were closing in and that they should be extremely careful. Meanwhile, Na, who was now in custody, denied any involvement in Marcela's disappearance, claiming she knew nothing about what had happened to her. Lisa, on the other hand, used her connections to try to hire a good lawyer for Na. While in Florida, Na attempted to sell her house in South Carolina as quickly as possible, likely to raise funds for their continued hiding or to flee the country. Authorities eventually tracked down Lisa and arrested her, and both women were taken back to Dallas. During initial questioning, neither woman provided any information, and their bail was set at $500,000 each. They were able to post bail and were released to house arrest, but were required to wear tracking devices that allowed authorities to monitor their movements. In August of the same year, Charles made a daring escape attempt, but police were hot on his trail and tracked him down to Utah, where he was hiding at the home of a former girlfriend. She, who had a 5-year-old son with Charles, was overjoyed to see him and didn't ask questions about his sudden return. When Charles was arrested, he initially refused to cooperate with the police or answer their questions. He was counting on his wealthy lover to use her influence and wealth to hire a top-notch lawyer to get him out of trouble. However, things took a dramatic turn on Christmas Eve in 2021. Lisa and Nina, who had been released on bail, suddenly went dark when their tracking bracelet stopped working due to the holiday chaos and high activity. The police didn't send a team to the suspect's location until the next day, but by then, they had already vanished. It was later discovered that the suspects had been carefully planning their escape for months. As a result, by the time the police pursued them, they had already crossed the border into Mexico undetected. From Mexico, they traveled to South Korea by air, and their trail eventually went cold in Cambodia. The FBI teamed up with the Cambodian police and immigration authorities to locate the suspects on the run. They women first raised suspicions after making a large cash withdrawal from an ATM, prompting authorities to monitor their movements. They tried to pay for everything in cash to stay under the radar, but security footage helped reveal their whereabouts. An ATM camera identified the fugitives, and another camera caught the license plate of the vehicle they arrived in. The vehicle's owner cooperated with police and took them to the residence where the foreign women were living extravagantly. They were recaptured in February 2022 and sent back to the United States, where they were taken into custody without the possibility of bail, ensuring they went directly to jail to face the law. Charles realized that his lover was only looking out for herself and had no intention of helping him avoid prison. This led him to decide to cooperate with the investigation and share information. His detailed account of the events that took place that night shocked many. Belen admitted to being in a romantic relationship with Lisa, the homeowner, and her spouse, Na, but claimed it was motivated by financial gain and a desire to further his music career. He did not have genuine feelings for these women and instead often pursued younger, attractive women, openly engaging in numerous affairs. On October 5, 2020, Chuck met Maricela, a young student, at a nightclub. They spent the evening drinking and dancing together, and he eventually invited her back to his place. Maricela agreed, and when they arrived, Chuck's roommates, Na and Lisa, were already asleep. Chuck and Maricela went to his room, where they engaged in intimate activities and fell asleep. Later that night, Lisa woke up and entered Chuck's room, where she saw Maricela sleeping next to him. This triggered a jealous outburst, and Lisa went to the kitchen to grab a large knife. She then returned to Chuck's room and attacked Maricela, repeatedly striking her with the knife. Charles reported that he was woken up by a noise and was initially disoriented due to intoxication. When he turned on the light, he was met with a disturbing scene. Marella's body had fallen to the floor beside the bed, where she had lost a significant amount of blood. Na entered the room, and both Charles and Na stood there for a few minutes, failing to provide any assistance to the victim. Once Charles regained his composure, he realized that he might be blamed for the crime due to his prior record, and that his influential acquaintances might avoid punishment. He claimed that this is why he agreed to help dispose of the body and conceal the crime. Charles stayed with friends for several days and, upon returning to collect his belongings, noticed that the blood stains on the floor and carpet had almost completely disappeared. Lisa informed him that she and Na had taken care of everything and destroyed the evidence of the crime. The three individuals involved decided it was best to leave town for a while and observe from a distance what would happen next. Lisa Dykebell's defense team argued that she had no motive to harm she. According to her lawyer, Lisa's relationship with Chuck was purely professional, and she saw his music career as a valuable investment. She claimed that his personal relationships and interactions with others did not concern her. A key point made by her defense was that Lisa had recently gotten married to Moran and was happy in her relationship. However, it was unclear why she and her wife had decided to take the surname of their young lodger, Charles, after their wedding, despite claiming he was insignificant to them. During the trial, Lisa portrayed Charles as hot-tempered and cruel, especially when intoxicated, and stated that she feared him. Lisa's account of the events that night claims that Chuck brought a new woman home from the club, but their encounter turned violent when an argument broke out. Chuck allegedly grabbed a knife in a fit of rage. Lisa and Nina intervened, trying to separate they, but it was too late. Maricela was already dead. Chuck then coerced Lisa and Nina into helping him dispose of the body and clean up the crime scene, threatening to harm them if they didn't comply. However, a witness who testified in court, a friend of Lisa's, painted a different picture. According to the friend, Lisa was intensely fixated on Chuck and had often expressed a desire to get rid of any woman who got close to him. The friend suggested that Lisa's emotions got the better of her that night. The friend also mentioned a peculiar detail, a statue of Santa Muerte in Lisa's home, which was part of an improvised altar. Lisa had jokingly told her friend that she was into black magic and knew how to cast a spell to make a man loyal only to her. The ritual apparently did not work as planned, and she turned to using a knife instead. A real estate agent who was approached by the women shortly after the incident testified that they were desperate to sell several properties they owned as quickly as possible. They also wanted to put their home in Dallas up for sale, but were unable to do so while the investigation was ongoing because the house was a crime scene. The situation took a turn for the worse when the remains of she were found. At this point, Lisa and Nina were willing to sell the property at a significantly reduced price, just to get the money quickly. During the trial, the court considered Charles's full confession and his cooperation with the investigation. However, things took a turn for the worse for the fugitives after they attempted to flee to another continent. In March 2023, Lisa Dyke Beltran was convicted of a heinous crime against 23-year-old Maricela, as well as tampering with evidence and attempting to escape. She received a life sentence with no possibility of parole. Charles Beltran and Nina Morin, on the other hand, pleaded guilty and cooperated with the investigation. They were found guilty of concealing evidence. Nina received a 7-year prison sentence, but may be eligible for release in 3 years if she exhibits good behavior. Charles, who had prior convictions, was sentenced to 12 years in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 8 years. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Lori Slasinski. Lori Slasinski, a 24-year-old former Auburn University student, disappeared mysteriously on June 10, 2006, from Auburn, Alabama. Her disappearance occurred after she had confirmed plans to attend a girls' night out at her best friend and coworker's house home. However, she never arrived. Located in eastern Alabama, Auburn is a rapidly growing city with a rich cultural mix and a strong sense of Southern hospitality. It is home to Auburn University, one of the nation's most recognized public universities. Lori was born to parents Casey and Arlene Slasinski on September 21, 1981. She had blue eyes and blonde hair, and her parents and older brother, Paul, adored her. The investigation into Lori's disappearance began with a disturbing discovery. Her dog was left unattended, the air conditioner was still on, and the telephone cord was missing from her home. The police were baffled by the lack of evidence, and Lori's family was left with unanswered questions. Had Lori left town in a hurry, or was something more sinister at play? After 16 years, the mystery of Lori's disappearance was finally solved, but the events surrounding her vanishing remain as puzzling as ever. The family originally came from New York State but later relocated to rural Alabama farm country near Auburn when Lori was 13. Growing up in a country setting with animals, Lori developed a passion for animals. According to her friends, Lori was stunning and enjoyed spending time with friends, watching movies, riding her bicycle, and playing video games. In addition to these leisure activities, she was diligent in her studies and received support from her family. After completing high school, Lori attended Auburn University, majoring in psychology with a minor in criminology. Her parents purchased a mobile home for her in a well-maintained house park popular with students, where she lived off campus with her cherished Yorkshire Terrier, Peanut. Lori maintained a close relationship with her family, and her mother would call her daily to check in. In 2005, Lori graduated with honors from Auburn University. Following graduation, she secured a job at the East Alabama Mental Health Center while still residing in the house park. She also made plans to pursue her master's degree in psychology in the near future. Lori's family was proud of her accomplishments, but they had no idea that something terrible was about to happen. On June 10, 2006, 24-year-old Lori planned a girls' night at her best friend Lindsey Braun's house. They intended to have a few drinks and watch a movie. Lori and Lindsey had met in their junior year at Auburn University and quickly became friends due to Lori's kind, charming, and outgoing personality. After graduating, they both worked at the same mental health facility, which strengthened their bond. At around 6:30 p.m. on June 10th, Lori called Lindsey to say she needed to stop at the store before heading over for their movie night. Unfortunately, Lori never arrived. Lindsey became worried when she didn't hear from Lori again that night or the next day. She called Lori multiple times and left messages on her home answering machine, but Lori never responded. When Lori didn't show up to work on Monday, June 12th, Lindsey's concerns escalated. It was highly unusual for Lori to miss work without informing anyone. After Lori failed to show up to work on Tuesday, June 13th, Lindsey and another colleague visited Lori's home to check on her. When they arrived at the house, Lindsey found the door unlocked and the air conditioning on, which was unusual. Although Lori was nowhere to be found, her dog, Peanut, was in his crate, looking well-fed and content, as if someone had been caring for him. Surprisingly, his crate was clean, despite Lori having been missing for several days. Lindsey felt a sense of unease as she realized it was unusual for Lori to leave her beloved pet alone and unattended. She recalled that Lori had placed 3 rugs on her kitchen floor because the dog refused to walk on the tile. However, when Lindsey entered Lori's home later that day, the rugs were missing, along with the outside trash can. On the same day, June 13, 2006, Lori's mother, Arlene, received a call from Lori's workplace, informing her that Lori had missed work for 2 consecutive days. Arlene immediately tried to contact Lori but was unable to reach her. Growing concerned for her daughter's well-being, Arlene left for Auburn after alerting her husband, Casey, about Lori's disappearance. Upon arriving at Lori's house, Arlene encountered a disturbing scene. The door was slightly ajar, and Lori's bed was perfectly made, but there was no sign of Lori. Her car was also missing. A closer inspection revealed that several items were gone, including the kitchen rugs, a pillow from the couch, a Galileo thermometer, a green trash can that usually held a rake and shovel, and the phone cord for the landline. Arlene's alarm grew as she realized that something was horribly wrong. She officially reported her daughter missing, holding on to the hope that Lori would eventually show up. As the initial investigation into Lori's disappearance began, police searched her house home but found no significant evidence linking to a suspect. However, they did notice signs of a struggle, scuff marks on the wall, and semen on her bedsheet. Additionally, traces of blood were discovered on the doorknob, and a coat hanger and a single golden hoop earring were also found at the scene. On June 10, 2006, police recovered surveillance footage showing Lori stopping at a Walmart in Alabama. This was the last known sighting of her, and no one had any idea what happened to her after that. Later that afternoon, Lori's mother, Arlene, received a phone call from one of Lori's friends, 25 years old Daryl Rick Ennis. Ennis claimed that he had met Lori on the day she went missing and thought she might have gone to make a drug deal. However, Arlene was skeptical of his story, despite knowing Ennis from when Lori invited him to spend Christmas with their family in 2005. Arlene couldn't believe that Lori would be involved in drug dealing and thought Ennis was lying, but she didn't know why he would make up such a story. Police received crucial information from Ennis himself. However, before they could investigate further, Lori's car was found engulfed in flames on a dead-end street near a bowling alley where Ennis used to work. This discovery, made on June 14, 2006, for days after Lori's disappearance, shifted the investigation from a missing persons case to a potential homicide. Unfortunately, the fire destroyed any potential evidence inside the car. Investigators found a hand-rolled cigarette near the vehicle and a gas can in the nearby woods, but Lori was not inside the car. Lori's family was devastated by the discovery, and they feared the worst. The only lead was the information Ennis had provided to Arlene. When questioned, Ennis repeated his story, adding more details. He claimed he and Lori grew marijuana together and speculated that she might have gone to sell her share. Ennis also suggested that Lori may have been involved with shady individuals. Police searched Lori's house thoroughly but found no evidence of her dealing drugs. During the investigation, they noticed scratches on Ennis's hands and arms, which he attributed to his dog. However, when they spoke to Lindsay, they uncovered more suspicious information. Lindsay reported that during her last phone conversation with Lori on the day she disappeared, she heard Rick Ennis speaking in the background. At the time, Lindsay didn't think much of it, as she knew Ennis was a friend of Lori's. Lindsay stated that when she asked Ennis about Lori's whereabouts via text, he replied that Lori was fine when he last saw her. Additionally, Lindsay told investigators that before Lori went missing, Lori mentioned that Ennis had written her a love letter, but Lori did not feel the same way. Lori had planned to talk to Ennis about her lack of romantic interest in him. Later, it was discovered that Ennis had told his friends about the love letter and Lori's rejection. When confronted with this new information, Ennis admitted to meeting Lori hours before her disappearance but claimed she was fine getting ready to go shopping when he left her house. However, investigators found inconsistencies in Ennis's statement, which raised suspicions. As a result, Rick Ennis became the prime suspect. The investigation led to a search of his car, where a knife, cleaning supplies, and handcuffs were found. Investigators kept collecting evidence by looking into Ennis's past, but they were about to encounter some unexpected surprises. Looking into Rick Ennis's dark past, investigators found that at the age of 12, he had murdered his mother and stepfather. The incident occurred on March 3, 1993, in North Montgomery, Alabama, where the family resided in a house. Ennis's mother, known for her kind and church-going nature, was first shot in the face and then beaten to death with a baseball bat. His stepfather, Eddie Joe Flowers, nicknamed Elvis due to his resemblance to the musician, met a similar fate. Upon returning home from work, Eddie was shot in the face with a shotgun by Rick. Following the murders, Ennis took the family car and crashed it into a fence along the highway. Alabama State Trooper John Clark encountered Ennis walking along the highway and inquired about his parents' whereabouts. Ennis confessed to killing them. A search of his backpack revealed a kitchen knife and ammunition for a 12-gauge shotgun and a .22 caliber. When questioned about his motives, the 12-year-old Ennis showed no emotion and explained that he was upset about his parents' plan to move, which would require him to change schools. Investigators believe Ennis lived with the bodies for 2 days, during which time he continued to attend school. He also confessed to planning to kill his 3 stepsisters, which shocked investigators. However, because of his age, he was tried as a minor and sentenced to 9 years in jail for the double murder. After his release, he moved to Auburn, where he met Lori Slasinski. Following Lori's disappearance, Ennis was the primary suspect, but without direct evidence for Lori's body, he couldn't be charged. Ennis left Auburn shortly after speaking with detectives and eventually settled in Huntsville, Alabama, in 2007. By then, Lori's case had gone cold. In Huntsville, Ennis moved in with Abram Sissons, telling him that he had kitchen rugs given to him by a woman from Auburn who had vanished, but didn't mention her name. Abram didn't suspect anything out of the ordinary about his conversations with Ennis until he discovered Ennis's dark past. At that point, Abram asked Ennis to leave right away. Later, Abram reported that his apartment was completely trashed when he returned. However, police were able to recover the rugs, and one of them tested positive for Ennis's blood. Abram also mentioned that he had seen a Galileo thermometer in Ennis's room before Ennis moved in with him, the same type that was missing from Lori's home. Unfortunately, even with this new information, the police were still unable to connect Ennis to Lori's murder at that time. As their main suspect remained at large, the case went unsolved, leaving Lori's distraught family waiting for answers. Years went by with no updates on the case. Then, in 2016, Mark Whitaker, a special agent with the Alabama State Bureau of Investigation, launched a cold case unit and reopened Lori's case. Alongside his team, including his longtime partner Agent J.W. Barnes, Lori's case was their top priority, and they began re-examining the evidence. They started sending evidence to forensic labs for testing and conducted multiple interviews. After re-examining the evidence, Ennis became the main suspect. Agent Mark suspected Ennis due to his past, but needed more evidence to prove his guilt. In a surprising turn of events, Agent Barnes discovered a crucial piece of evidence while reviewing old files. He found an unopened report from 2006 containing test results from Lori's house. The results revealed Rick Ennis's DNA on Lori's bed sheet and the front door. With all the evidence compiled, investigators built a strong case against Ennis, leading to an indictment in 2018. At that time, Ennis was living in Pilot, Virginia, engaged to Elena Atkinson, and working for a company that built portable living structures called yurts. On August 6, 2018, Rick Ennis was arrested by U.S. Marshals on his 38th birthday, 12 years after Lori Slasinski's disappearance from Auburn. The arrest brought relief to Lori's family but shocked Ennis's fiancée and co-workers. Initially charged with 2 counts of capital murder. The trial started on April 1, 2022. The prosecution presented evidence linking Ennis to the crime, including a cigarette but with his DNA found in Lori's bed sheet. However, the defense suggested that the police might have taken the cigarette from Ennis's home and planted it at the crime scene to frame him. The defense also attempted to discredit Lori Slasinski by implying she was involved in drug dealing, which could explain how Ennis's DNA ended up on the bed sheet. Ennis claimed he had consensual sex with Lori before she disappeared, suggesting they were intimate despite Lori previously rejecting his advances. Nevertheless, his account lacked credibility, especially after 2 additional witnesses came forward with crucial information. One of his former co-workers in Alabama, Jeremy Brooks, stated that Ennis called him on June 9, 2006, the day before Lori's disappearance. Ennis asked Jeremy to bring him gas and let him keep the gas tank, but Jeremy refused. According to Jeremy, Ennis claimed he had run out of gas and needed help getting some. Later, after Lori's burned car was found, a gas can matching the description of one missing from Ennis's workplace, a bowling alley, was discovered. Another former co-worker, Terry Booth from South Carolina, shared a disturbing experience she had with Ennis years earlier. When asked why he moved from Auburn, Ennis told her he had to dispose of a body. Although Ennis's comment was initially thought to be a joke, his arrest for Lori's murder proved it was not. Despite denying the allegations and maintaining his innocence, Ennis was found guilty after a 2-day jury deliberation. He faced the death penalty, but prosecutors agreed to drop the death penalty after consulting with Lori's mother, Arlene. Arlene later stated that she agreed to a life sentence without parole for Rick Ennis to avoid years of potential appeals and ensure Ennis would never be released. Ennis was sentenced to life without parole on April 14, 2022, and is currently incarcerated at the William E. Donaldson Correctional Facility in Bessemer, Alabama. The outcome was bittersweet for Arlene Slasinski. Tearfully, she acknowledged that it meant she had to accept that Lori would never return home, a hope her heart had held on to. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Tracy Hallett and J.B. Beasley. J.B. Beasley, born on July 31, 1981, in Troy, Alabama, to parents Cheryl and Hilton Lanier Beasley. After her parents' separation, Beasley moved to Dothan with her mother in 1984. She was deeply loved by her mother and stepfather, Joey Begun, whom her mother married a few years later. Beasley grew up in a comfortable home in Dothan, Alabama, with her 4 sisters. She developed into a sociable young woman with a wide range of interests, including cheerleading, dance, piano, and swimming. She also worked as a model, along with her sisters, for several agencies. Despite her many pursuits, she valued time spent with friends and family. In high school, Beasley befriended Tracy Hallett, a fellow cheerleader. They quickly became inseparable. Tracy Hallett was born on March 3, 1982, to Carolyn and Robert Hallett. Her father, a member of the Dothan Police Department, tragically passed away when Tracy was just 5 years old. Her mother, Carolyn, later remarried a man named Mike Roberts, who helped raise Tracy Hallett alongside her mother. Tracy Hallett was a shy but selfless person who always put others before herself. She was particularly protective of her 2 younger brothers and took her responsibilities as an older sister seriously. Like Beasley, Tracy Hallett attended Northview High School, earning good grades and participating as a cheerleader. As Beasley and Tracy Hallett were transitioning into adulthood, they were unaware of the tragic events that would soon shatter their hopes and dreams. On the evening of July 31, 1999, around 10:05 p.m., they friends left Dothan in J.B. Beasley's black 1993 Mazda 929, heading to a birthday party in Headland, just a few miles north. However, their unfamiliarity with the roads soon led them into difficulty. Beasley and Tracy Hallett started their trip but took a wrong turn shortly after leaving their hometown, becoming lost. At around 10:30 p.m., they stopped at a BP gas station in Headland, near the intersection of routes 173 and 431, to get directions. From the gas station's payphone, they called their friends to get clearer directions to their party destination. However, after continuing their trip, they found themselves in Ozark, Alabama, approximately 24 miles northwest of Headland, rather than their desired location. At 11:30 p.m., they realized they were still lost and pulled over at the Big Little store to get their bearings. Although the store was closed, Tracy Hallett used the payphone to call her mother, explaining that they had gotten lost and were now in Ozark. She updated her mother on their plans to return home rather than continue their search for the party. A woman named Marilyn Merrick and her daughters pulled into a gas station to buy a soda. Tracy Hallett and Beasley approached them, asking for directions to Dothan. Marilyn did her best to explain the route, and they seemed to grasp it. She noticed that they appeared to be well-mannered and were driving a clean and tidy car. As Marilyn watched, they followed her directions, pulling out of the parking lot and turning right. On August 1, 1999, Tracy Hallett's mother filed a missing person report with the police around 8 a.m. Investigators quickly began searching for Tracy Hallett and her friend, Beasley, who had not been seen since the previous night. Their first lead came when police discovered Beasley's car parked on Herring Avenue in Ozark. The vehicle showed signs of recent use, with an almost empty gas tank despite being filled the day before. The car was also dirty and had a partially rolled down driver's side window, yet the doors were locked with no signs of forced entry. Inside, police found Beasley's driver's license on the dashboard, along with 8 purses and cash, which suggested that the disappearance was not a result of a typical theft or robbery. The investigation into She's initially focused on finding Beasley's car keys, as they were the only reported missing item. However, there was no sign of either Tracy Hallett or Beasley. A suspicious palm print on the locked trunk of Beasley's car heightened the police's concerns that something was terribly wrong. Although they suspected the trunk might hold important clues, they couldn't access it without the keys. It took 6 hours for the police to realize that the trunk could be opened from the inside using a latch, eliminating the need for the car key or a locksmith. Upon opening the trunk, the officers made a disturbing discovery. The lifeless bodies of the girls were found inside. Both victims were fully dressed, but their pants were soiled below the waist. Each girl had a single gunshot wound to the head, with Tracy Howlett shot in the temple and Beasley in the right cheek. Tracy Howlett had suffered injuries consistent with a violent struggle, including a 9mm shell casing lodged on her leg, scratches on her arm, and thornbriars tangled in her jeans. Despite the gruesome nature of the crime, investigators believed that they were likely killed while inside the trunk of the car and that their deaths were not the result of a random attack, but rather an intentional act. As the families of the victims were notified of the tragic discovery, the authorities formally launched a homicide investigation. Initially, detectives considered robbery as a possible motive, but this theory was quickly dismissed when they found that the victims' personal belongings, including purses, jewelry, money, and credit cards, were still inside the car. Autopsies revealed that they had no alcohol or drugs in their system, and there was no evidence of sexual assault. This led investigators to rule out the possibility that the crime was motivated by sex. However, a subsequent report from the State Crime Lab, issued more than 2 months later, found traces of unknown semen on Tracy Howlett's clothing and skin. The palm print found on the trunk lid remained unidentified, with no matches in the database and no suspect to compare it to. As a result, authorities had limited leads to pursue. Despite the widespread attention the double murder of the teenagers received, investigators were no closer to identifying a suspect. A month after the discovery of Beasley and Tracy Howlett's bodies, a surprising breakthrough occurred. Johnny William Barentine, a 28-year-old Ozark resident, visited the Ozark Police Department on September 1st and shared a remarkable account. He claimed to have witnessed the double murder, stating that he had seen the incident on the same night as the crimes, around the time Tracy Howlett made a call from the Big Little Store's payphone. According to Barentine, he had been out buying milk for his 2-year-old son when he stumbled upon the horrific event. He returned home at 1 a.m., visibly upset, and told his wife that he had been in a collision with a black truck near Herring Road. After sharing this incident with friends in the days that followed Tracy Howlett and Beasley's murder, they encouraged him to report it to the police. They suggested that this information might be connected to the murders and could help the police solve the case, ultimately leading to the reward. During a 4-hour interview with Ozark Police, Barentine's account of the events surrounding the killings changed 6 times. Initially, he told police that on the night of the murders, he saw a black truck speeding away from the area where the bodies were found. However, as the interview progressed, his story continued to evolve and change. Eventually, Barentine claimed that he had given a ride to a tattooed man he didn't know, and they drove past the Big Little Store together. He then testified that the man got into the car with 2 girls, whom he identified as Tracy Howlett and Beasley. According to Barentine, the man forced they out of the car on Herring Avenue. A confrontation took place between the man and they as they tried to escape. After putting they in the trunk, Barentine reported seeing something in the man's hands just before hearing 2 gunshots. The man then returned to the car, and Barentine drove him away from the scene before heading home. In a different account, Barentine confessed to investigators that he knew the man he had given a ride to and identified him as his neighbor. Notably, Barentine lived less than a mile from where the police found the victims' bodies. Johnny Barentine was named the prime suspect in the murders of Beasley and Tracy Howlett, but his story raised several red flags. He failed to mention any sexual activity that would explain the semen found on Beasley's clothing and body. Additionally, the neighbor he implicated had a solid alibi for the time of the crime. Barentine's appearance in his mugshot also seemed suspicious, as he looked startled and disheveled, as if he had just been awoken from a deep sleep. Despite these inconsistencies, police initially believed they had the right person. However, Barentine soon confessed that he had fabricated his entire story to collect the reward money. Surprisingly, at the preliminary hearing on September 21st, Alabama Bureau of Investigation agent Charles Huggins testified that Barentine was able to accurately describe her clothing and other details consistent with the crime scene, which suggested that he may have had some knowledge of the events. After his arrest, Barentine was held in the Dale County Jail in Ozark without the possibility of bail. At a bond hearing on October 18th, Barentine claimed he was not involved in the killings. He told the judge that he had not picked up a tattooed man and had not witnessed anything on the night of the murders. According to Barentine, he had gone to the BP station around 11 p.m. to buy milk for his child and later fabricated a story to collect the reward money. The judge denied Barentine's request for bond, and he returned to jail. Despite the challenges, Barentine's family continued to support him. They gave interviews to the media, stating that he was innocent and incapable of harming anyone. Barentine's lawyer, Bill Kimmons, also maintained his client's innocence, stating that the prolonged interrogation had taken a toll on him, causing him to become entangled in his own web of deceit. During police questioning, Barentine was not informed that he was free to leave or use the bathroom at any time. His defense team highlighted that he had limited education, having only completed the 7th grade and part of the 8th grade, and was in special education classes, which suggested he lacked the capacity to plan a complex crime. He was eventually released from jail on December 17, 1999, when DNA evidence revealed that his DNA did not match the semen found on the victim's body and clothing. In January 2000, a grand jury in Dale County declined to indict Barentine, effectively clearing him as a suspect in the double murder. The investigation suffered a setback after Barentine's clearance, and the methods used by investigators were criticized. Questions arose about the Ozark Police Department's ability to handle the case. Despite this, the police still had several potential suspects under consideration. A Michigan man was considered a key suspect due to his proximity to the scene and suspicious behavior. He was in the area on the night of the murders and attended a party near where Beasley's car was found. Within days, he left town, raising suspicions. Investigators made 3 trips to Michigan to interview him, but he was unable to provide a solid alibi for hours on the night of the murder. Police were initially interested in 2 key leads, a person of interest whose DNA didn't match the crime scene, and a driver of a small white pickup truck captured on surveillance footage. The video showed the truck at the gas pumps at the same time the victims, Beasley and Tracy Hallett, were nearby at the payphone. However, no record of a gas purchase existed, and the video was of poor quality, making it impossible to clearly identify the driver or determine if anyone got out of the truck. The police released a photo of the truck a month later, asking for the public's help in identifying the driver. Unfortunately, no one came forward with any information, and the lead eventually disappeared. The investigation's last lead was a man from Mississippi who had been arrested in Jones County on an outstanding warrant for possessing drug paraphernalia. He had been visiting relatives in Ozark, but departed 2 days after the murders. Investigators wanted to question him, but ultimately, he provided no significant information. Due to lack of evidence, they were forced to release him. In March 2000, a woman came forward, claiming she heard screams and 2 gunshots near Highway 123 South, just inside the city limits, on the night of the murders. She admitted she had been scared to report it earlier. Police searched the area based on her description and found a 9mm bullet, the same type used to kill they. However, the bullet's brand did not match the brand of the bullet shell casing found on Tracy's body. The unspent bullet found no useful markings for forensic comparison to other evidence, ruling out another potential lead in the case. Despite this and other dead ends over the years, investigators remained hopeful for a DNA match. As the families of Beasley and Tracy Howlett tried to move on with their lives, the case eventually went cold. Years later, new information rekindled the investigation. In 2015, a bombshell accusation shook the case. Rena, an auxiliary police officer with the Ozark Police Department, came forward and publicly accused a fellow officer of murdering Beasley and Tracy Howlett and implicated others in a cover-up. Rena made several disturbing allegations regarding the Ozark Police Department. She claimed that on July 31, 1999, a police officer stopped Beasley and demanded to know the location of cassette tapes containing incriminating conversations about the police department's involvement in cocaine trafficking. According to Rena, this confrontation led to the tragic murder of two innocent teenagers. Rena further alleged that she was threatened by multiple law enforcement officials who knew the identity of the murderer but helped cover up the crime by destroying evidence. Specifically, Rena accused three officers, Gary Butch Whittington, Rex Tipton, and Eddie Henderson, of harassing and intimidating her. She also implicated the former police chief, Tony Spivey, who led the original investigation, in the cover-up. However, Rena declined to reveal the name of the officer she believed was directly responsible for the murders. American journalist John B. Carroll wrote that the officer likely assumed they girls planned to use the tapes as evidence in a court case set for August 2, 1999, just over a day after their murders. Carroll also reported that Rena was brutally beaten with a baseball bat after coming forward, which prevented her from revealing the actual killer. Law enforcement officials accused by Rena denied any involvement in the murders of Beasley and Tracy Howlett. Due to a lack of physical evidence, none of the officials were ever formally named as suspects in the case. Despite this, online allegations against them spread quickly on true crime websites and social media. As a result, Keith Coffin, Rex Tipton, Tony Spivey, Eddie Henderson, and Gary Butch Whittington from the Ozark, Alabama Police Department sued Rena Crum, John B. Carroll for defamation in 2016. The case was later dismissed in 2018. In May 2016, Rena Crum was convicted of harassing Beasley's sister over several years and received a suspended sentence and a $250 fine. Despite an extensive investigation that spanned 2 decades, including numerous interviews and DNA samples, authorities were unable to identify a suspect. It wasn't until 2019 that advances in DNA technology finally led to a breakthrough. In March 2019, investigators sent the DNA evidence found on Beasley's body in clothes to a specialized lab in Virginia called Parabon Nano. The lab used public genealogy databases to analyze the DNA and found a match, leading them to identify a suspect named Coley McCraney. McCraney, 45, was not previously a suspect in the 1999 murders of Beasley and Tracy Howlett, but DNA evidence now implicated him in the crime. McCraney was born in Alabama and graduated from Carroll High School in Ozark in 1992. During his time in high school, he was an athlete and also served as the president of the library club. After graduation, he enlisted in the U.S. Air Force and served from 1993 to 1997. In 1992, McCraney was married, but they separated 2 years later. They eventually divorced. His ex-wife filed a complaint with the Air Force in 1994, alleging that McCraney had assaulted her. McCraney later remarried in 2001 and had children with his second wife. In 1998, he was found to have failed to pay child support, but otherwise, he had no significant criminal record over the past 20 years. McCraney worked as a truck driver throughout his career, employed by several Alabama-based trucking companies over the years. More recently, he co-founded a church and worked as a bishop. At the time of the 1999 murders, Coley McCraney was 26 years old and living in Ozark, just 1 mile from where the bodies of Beasley and Tracy Howlett were found. Nearly 20 years later, on March 15, 2019, McCraney was arrested in Daleville, Alabama, following a traffic stop. During his subsequent interview with police, McCraney claimed to not know the victims. However, the investigators did not reveal any motive for the murders. The news of McCraney's arrest sent shockwaves through the Ozark community, including its police chief, Marlon Walker, who had attended school with McCraney. As the case seemed to be finally unraveling, a new development emerged. Rena Crum, a 53-year-old woman who had previously accused the Ozark Police Department of covering up the murder, withdrew her allegations during an August 2022 hearing. McCraney, 49, is currently in Dale County Jail awaiting trial on 5 counts of capital murder for the shooting deaths of Beasley and Tracy Hollett. His bond was denied, and his trial is scheduled for April 17, 2023. The families of the victims expressed relief that the alleged killer has been apprehended, but they still face the difficult process of reliving painful memories during the trial. McCraney was ultimately found guilty of the murder and rape of Beasley and the murder of Hollett. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Daniel Wozniak. Sam Herr was born to parents Stephen and Raquel Kalberman on May 29, 1983, in Los Angeles, California. As their only child, Sam Herr was showered with love and attention from his parents, his father being a special education teacher and his mother a stay-at-home parent. Sam Herr maintained a close relationship with his parents even after he moved away. Despite his physically imposing stature, Sam Herr's friends affectionately referred to him as a gentle giant, describing him as a fun-loving and laid-back individual. Sam Herr enlisted in the United States Army at a young age and completed tours of duty in Afghanistan and Germany as part of the 173rd Airborne. After serving for 3 years, he was honorably discharged and returned to Southern California to pursue higher education using the GI Bill. His goal was to complete college and then re-enlist in the Army as an officer. To achieve this, Sam enrolled in Orange Coast Community College, where he befriended Julie Kibushi, who was 3 years his junior. However, Sam Herr struggled with the emotional aftermath of his military service, ultimately developing post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, a common affliction among veterans. When 28-year-old Sam Herr failed to visit his parents' house over a weekend as planned, they began to worry. Sam Herr's parents, Stephen and Raquel, became increasingly concerned after several attempts to contact their son went unanswered. Deciding to take matters into their own hands, Stephen went to Sam Herr's apartment in Costa Mesa with his wife to see what was amiss. Their discovery led to immediate panic when they could not find their son and only saw Julie Kibushi in a state of horror. Stephen quickly dialed 911 as Raquel choked and screamed. The moment they realized Julie had met a gruesome end, they knew their lives would never be the same, and the trauma would have a lasting impact. The Costa Mesa community was shocked by the incident, as murders are rare there. At the apartment, police found no signs of a disturbance. The bedroom, however, presented a disturbing scene. On the bedside table, investigators found an unused knife, as well as 2 books, a combat manual and a sex guide. But it was the condition of the bed that was truly horrifying. The bed was soaked in the Julie Kibushi's blood, and the deceased Julie Kibushi was found in a compromising position, partially lying on the bed and partially kneeling on the floor. Her pants had been pulled down, exposing her lower body, leading detectives to suspect that she may have been sexually assaulted before her murder. The autopsy revealed that she had suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the head, with 1 bullet entering the top center of her skull. Although a knife was found on the bedside table, it appeared to have been unused. Other unusual details included a tiara on the victim's head and the words, "All yours," scrawled on the back of Julie Kibushi's sweater. Julie Kibushi handbag was found in the kitchen. The detectives identified the victim as 23-year-old Julie Kibushi, who was born on Valentine's Day in 1987 to a Japanese-American family. She was the first daughter and third of 4 children to parents June and Masa Kibushi. Her parents affectionately called her "my Valentine girl" from a young age. Julie Kibushi developed a passion for tap dancing at the age of 5, which continued to grow throughout her life. Those who knew her described her as a joyful person to be around, with a goofy and bubbly personality that could light up a room. Julie Kibushi was known for her kindness and willingness to go out of her way to help others. Julie Kibushi's life was a balance between her Japanese heritage and her independent American spirit. She had recently graduated from the Orange County School of the Arts and was pursuing a degree in fashion design at Orange Coast Community College. There, she befriended 26-year-old Sam Herr and even tutored him in anthropology. Little did she know, her kindness would ultimately lead to her tragic demise. The police investigation into Julie Kibushi's murder was underway. Detectives meticulously examined the crime scene, searching for clues that would reveal the truth about her final moments. Their attention turned to Sam Herr, as Julie Kibushi's body was found in his apartment. His sudden disappearance further raised suspicions. With evidence pointing to Sam Herr's involvement, investigators decided to take a closer look at him. Detectives suspected that Sam Herr had committed the crime in a moment of passion and then fled. This theory was supported by the fact that Sam Herr was nowhere to be found after the murder of Julie Kibushi in his apartment. The discovery of text messages from Sam Herr's number on Julie Kibushi's phone further fueled their suspicions. Initially, the messages seemed innocuous, with Sam Herr sending Julie Kibushi a text at 2:45 p.m. on May 21, 2010, telling her he would help a friend and then visit his parents. However, just 2 hours later, his messages took a drastic turn, as he frantically asked Julie Kibushi to come to his apartment. However, investigators interpreted these messages as evidence of Sam Herr's guilt, arguing that he had planned for Julie Kibushi to visit his apartment, which ultimately led to the murder. The disappearance of several key items from the apartment hinted at Sam Herr's possible flight. His passport and car were both missing, leading investigators to a straightforward conclusion: Sam Herr was on the run and likely the prime suspect in the crime. As the investigation continued, the Costa Mesa police tracked Sam Herr's cell phone and credit card activity to pinpoint his location. They discovered that his credit card had been used for 4 ATM withdrawals and a purchase at a pizza delivery place in Long Beach, California, just 20 miles from Sam's home. Police anticipated that Sam Herr would appear in the surveillance footage of the ATM. However, when the bank provided the footage, the police were shocked to see a teenager wearing a hoodie, not Sam Herr, withdrawing money from his account. Neither the police nor Sam Herr's parents could identify the mysterious boy. Investigators believed he was probably helping Sam Herr escape or hide. In either case, the Costa Mesa police were determined to find him. On May 26, 2010, they discovered that his credit card had been used for another pizza delivery, and they began tracing the delivery driver. Police went to an address provided by a tipster, expecting to catch Sam Herr, but instead found 17-year-old Wesley Freilich and his friends. Although initially suspected, authorities quickly cleared Wesley's name. However, they discovered that he possessed Sam Herr's credit card. Wesley told investigators a surprising story. He had been given the credit card by Daniel Wozniak, a local theater actor who had met Wesley through community theater. Daniel Wozniak claimed to be a bail bondsman and said he needed help collecting money from Sam Herr. Believing Wozniak's story, Wesley agreed to withdraw cash using the credit card, unaware of the true circumstances. A total of $1,900 was withdrawn from the account, sparking further investigation. The name Daniel Wozniak was familiar to investigators, who had previously found an invitation to his upcoming wedding in Sam Herr's apartment. This raised several questions. Who was Daniel Wozniak, and what was his connection to Sam Herr? Was he involved in helping Sam Herr escape, or was he a more sinister accomplice to the murder? These questions needed to be answered. To understand Daniel Wozniak's potential role, investigators looked into his background. Born on March 23, 1984, Daniel Wozniak was the youngest of three brothers. Due to his parents' demanding work schedules, he spent a significant amount of time with his grandparents after school. Daniel Wozniak grew up in a privileged household and was accustomed to luxury. Daniel Wozniak's journey to becoming an actor began in his early 20s. Despite struggling to hold down a job and often having to move to low-paying positions, his passion for acting and singing in musicals kept him going. It was during this time that he met his future wife, a fellow actress, and they eventually got married. However, their happiness was short-lived. On May 26, 2010, the day of Daniel Wozniak's bachelor party in Huntington Beach, California, police arrived with an arrest warrant. This unexpected turn of events linked Daniel Wozniak to the murder of Julie Kibushi, as it turned out that Sam Herr, the suspected killer, lived in the same apartment complex as Daniel Wozniak. Authorities believed that Daniel Wozniak may have helped Sam Herr escape or hide, leading them to assume he was involved in the crime. Police arrested and questioned Daniel Wozniak. Initially, during interrogation, Daniel Wozniak claimed that his only wrongdoing was credit card fraud and that he had covered for his friend Sam Herr. He explained to investigators that he, Sam Herr, and Wesley had planned to withdraw all of his money from the bank and then report the credit cards as stolen. Daniel Wozniak claims he dropped Sam Herr off at a local mall. Detectives remained skeptical, however, believing that Daniel Wozniak was still protecting Sam Herr and had more to do with Julie Kibushi's murder than he had let on. In an effort to uncover the truth, police asked Wozniak to provide a DNA sample, a request that made him nervous. Detectives noticed Daniel Wozniak's nervous behavior when questioned about his DNA being found at Sam Herr's apartment, despite his attempts to act nonchalant. As the pressure mounted, he began to alter his story repeatedly. Eventually, Daniel Wozniak cracked and admitted he knew about Julie Kibushi's murder and had helped the perpetrator escape. However, when reminded that his DNA had been collected, he insisted it would not match any evidence found on Julie Kibushi's body, clinging to the claim of his innocence. Just as detectives were expecting Daniel Wozniak to reveal more information, he abruptly ended the interview. The detectives, determined to uncover the truth, informed Daniel Wozniak that he would be arrested as an accessory to murder if he didn't provide a full account of his involvement. Daniel Wozniak, who was scheduled to get married in just 48 hours, was caught between revealing the truth and avoiding arrest, which would ruin his wedding plans. Under intense questioning, Daniel Wozniak's story began to unravel. Detectives sensed his weakness and accelerated the process by falsely claiming that DNA evidence linked him to Julie Kibushi's body. They misled him, as DNA test results would not be available for weeks. Instead of disputing the claim, Daniel Wozniak surprisingly explained that his DNA would be on Julie Kibushi's body because he was near her. This inconsistent response raised suspicions. As Daniel Wozniak's lies continued to crumble, he made a stunning revelation, which was particularly alarming to detectives because they had initially observed only one gunshot wound at the crime scene. It wasn't until the autopsy was performed that a second gunshot wound was discovered, casting further doubt on Daniel Wozniak's credibility. Daniel Wozniak's confession implicated him as an accomplice to the murder, allowing investigators to formally detain him. However, detectives still needed to locate Sam Herr, and Daniel Wozniak refused to cooperate. Despite being in custody, Daniel Wozniak made a phone call to his fiancée, Rachel Buffett. Unbeknownst to Daniel Wozniak, the conversation was being recorded, which would eventually ensnare him in his own deceit. Rachel decided to prioritize her freedom over her relationship and informed Daniel Wozniak that she would share more information with the detectives. Realizing he needed to act swiftly, Daniel Wozniak became frantic and sought to negotiate a deal with the detectives, a reversal of his stance just hours earlier. Daniel Wozniak revealed a shocking account to the detectives, detailing his sinister murder plan. It began with a seemingly innocuous request to a friend, Sam Herr, whom he considered trustworthy. On May 21, 2010, Daniel Wozniak asked Sam Herr to help him move boxes at the Los Alamitos Theater attic, located on a local military base. Sam Herr was initially unaware of what had happened. When he realized he had been shot, he begged Daniel Wozniak for help. However, Daniel Wozniak showed no mercy. Without hesitation, he reloaded the gun and shot Sam Herr a second time, killing him instantly. The suspect brutally murdered Sam Herr and didn't stop there. He then used Sam Herr's phone to text Julie Kibushi, luring her to Sam Herr's apartment. He left Sam Herr's body in the attic later that night. The suspect snuck into Sam Herr's apartment, where Julie Kibushi had fallen into his trap. He then shot Julie Kibushi twice in the head. Daniel Wozniak altered the crime scene to make people think Sam Herr was the culprit, and he fled after attacking and killing Julie Kibushi. However, Daniel Wozniak realized that he still had to hide Sam Herr's body. Daniel Wozniak went back to the attic and cut off Sam Herr's hands and head to make it harder to identify the body. He then got rid of these body parts in a nearby park. Despite his gruesome actions, Daniel Wozniak appeared to be unaffected and returned to the theater, where he was seen laughing and joking with others in several photos taken at cast parties, which were later found by detectives. The underlying motive for the murders was surprisingly straightforward: money. Daniel Wozniak's financial struggles were well documented, with 2 months of unpaid rent threatening his eviction and no means to fund the lavish wedding and honeymoon he had planned. However, his situation changed dramatically when he discovered that Sam Herr had $62,000 in savings from his military service. This revelation sparked a sinister plan, and Daniel Wozniak brutally murdered 2 innocent people in cold blood, all to fund his own extravagant celebrations. The bag containing crucial evidence against Daniel Wozniak was meant to be disposed of by his brother Tim, but Tim threw it over their parents' fence instead. The bag held incriminating items like bloody clothing, a weapon, and victim Sam Herr's records and passport, all with Daniel's DNA. This treasure trove of evidence helped secure a quick conviction, with Daniel found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder on December 16, 2015. On January 11, 2016, the jury in Daniel Wozniak's trial recommended the death penalty after only 1 hour of deliberation, a remarkably short time for such a serious decision. The judge later sentenced Daniel Wozniak to death on September 23, 2016. Years after the trial, detectives discovered that Rachel Buffett, Daniel Wozniak's former fiancée, had been aware of the murder plots and had misled investigators. Despite her denials, Rachel Buffett was arrested and charged with 3 felony counts of accessory after the fact for allegedly lying to the police on multiple occasions. On September 12, 2018, Rachel Buffett was found guilty of 2 serious charges, which carried a maximum sentence of 44 months in prison. As a result, she received a 32-month prison sentence on November 8, 2018. She was eventually released in 2019. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Leanne Tiernan. Leanne Tiernan was born on September 27, 1984, to Michael Tiernan and Sharon Hawkhead in Bramley. Although her parents divorced shortly after her birth, Leanne remained close to her father. She and her older sister, Michelle, lived with their mother in Leeds, but their father continued to play an active role in their lives. Leanne was also very fond of her grandparents and would often accompany them to church on Sunday mornings. She had a sweet tooth and was affectionately nicknamed Chocolate Chip Niece by an uncle. Leanne was a student at West Leeds High School. She had been diligently studying for her GCSEs. A day out with her best friend, 15-year-old Sarah Whitehouse, was a fun holiday. They planned to go to Leeds for some early Christmas shopping. On Sunday, November 26, 2000, after going to church with her grandmother, Leanne returned home to prepare for an outing with Sarah. She wears a black and white ribbed turtleneck sweater, black pants, and black ankle boots over a blue jacket. She styled her hair in her favorite French style, kissed her mother, and set off to meet Sarah. Leanne and Sarah took a bus to downtown Leeds and spent the afternoon shopping. By late afternoon, they finished their work and boarded the bus back to Bramley. At about 4:50 p.m., they got out of the car and walked to Sarah's house and parted ways. Sarah watched Leanne walk towards Howley Gill, a public footpath that was a shortcut to her house. Even though the path was unlit and went through a wooded area, Leanne felt safe walking because it was still light out. It should have only taken Leanne 20 minutes to get home, but when Sarah called Leanne's house at 5:20 p.m. to chat, she was surprised to hear that Leanne hadn't come home yet. Sharon kept calling Leanne's mobile phone, but she did not answer. At 7 p.m., Sharon reported Leanne missing to the local police station. West Yorkshire Police, led by Detective Superintendent Chris Gregg, launched a large-scale search operation. The terrain is challenging, with more than 700 homes, vacant lots, woods, canals, drainage shafts, and wells to search. The police are determined to find Leanne and bring her home safely. They used helicopters, uniformed police, and search dogs to scour the area, going from house to house. To preserve any potential evidence, trash collection in the area has been suspended. A week later, despite their best efforts, there was still no sign of Leanne. Investigators reconstructed her final activities with the help of her sister Michelle and close friend Sarah. As the investigation unfolded, several witnesses came forward claiming to have seen a suspicious man walking his black and tan dog in the Howley Gill area just an hour before Leanne got off the bus on her way home. The police created a composite sketch of the man, describing him as 5 feet 8 inches with a stocky build, round face, and possible scarring. He was seen wearing a black beanie, a long waterproof coat, and dirty jeans. Police have released this information to the public. As the investigation stalled, the case began to go cold. However, the public continues to show support for Leanne's family, doing everything they can to make her story known. Dad of 3 from Leeds, Sean Clark, even offered a £10,000 reward for any information that could lead to Leanne's safe return. Additionally, Iceland Foods, a supermarket chain, printed Leanne's picture and details on their milk cartons nationwide. As the months passed, investigators searched more than 2,000 homes and outbuildings along Leanne's route home from the shopping district. The police still haven't found Leanne. Her loved ones always hoped that one day she would return home. But 9 months after her disappearance, on August 20, 2001, a man named Mark Bisson was walking his dog in Lindley Woods, a forest near North Yorkshire, when he stumbled upon a mysterious discovery. Initially, it appeared to be a pile of rubbish, but as he looked closer, he discovered a floral duvet wrapped in twine. When removing the rope, Bisson found a body wrapped in 9 large garbage bags. The police were called, and they carefully removed the blanket and bag to reveal the body of a fully clothed young girl. The body was found with its hands bound behind its back with 3 yellow cable ties, and a leather dog collar was tightly secured around its neck. Underneath the black garbage bag covering its head, investigators discovered the decomposing face of a young woman. Using fingerprints, they were able to identify the body as Leanne Tiernan. An autopsy later confirmed that Leanne had been strangled to death with a plastic cable tie. The investigation shifted from a missing persons case to a murder inquiry. Authorities believe the killer was likely a local resident. 2 key pieces of evidence support this theory. Leanne's body was found just 16 miles from where she was last seen, and the yellow cable used to bind her hands is commonly used by the British postal system, especially Royal Mail or Parcel Force. The green garbage bags used to wrap Leanne's body were identified as coming from Morrison's, a popular grocery store chain with 2 locations in the area. Investigators collected DNA samples from Leanne's family members, friends, and known sex offenders in the area, hoping to find a match. In addition, a thorough search of the bushland area where Leanne's body was buried was conducted. The investigation into Leanne's death was ongoing, but one thing puzzled detectives: her body was found in an area that had been thoroughly searched before, and it didn't show the usual signs of decomposition after 9 months. Her hair was still styled in the same ponytail with the same hair tie and clip she had when she went missing. The medical examiner's analysis of her cardiac tissue revealed that Leanne was killed on the day she was kidnapped, and her body was stored in a cold environment for months. The killer attempted to dispose of her body by leaving it in a common dump area, wrapped in a duvet, a few weeks before it was discovered. Although the killer tried to hide the body, he accidentally saved a significant amount of forensic evidence and DNA. However, when authorities analyzed the body, they were disappointed to find no DNA evidence of the killer. They then turned their attention to investigating the items found with Leanne's body, hoping to find clues that will help them catch the killer. The investigation found dog hair on Leanne's clothes, leading police to attempt to create a DNA profile of the dog in the hope of identifying the killer. The dog hair was sent to a Texas university that specializes in DNA profiling of purebred pets. Although the university was able to obtain a partial DNA profile, they were unable to match it to a specific dog, so analysis was stopped. A knitted scarf was found around Leanne's neck containing knotted human hair. The hair was submitted for DNA testing, and a DNA profile was successfully created from the small amount of DNA found inside the hair shaft. The police then turned their attention to the dog collar that had been used to wrap a black bin liner around Leanne's neck. The collar was found to have been manufactured by a company called Armitage Leather Products, based in Nottingham. Detectives hoped that if the killer had purchased the dog collar from them, they might be able to obtain his name or address. The police reached out to the manufacturer and requested sales records. After analyzing these documents, investigators contacted more than 220 wholesalers across the UK. Their 112th inquiry proved successful. They contacted a company called Pet Pajamas, based in Liverpool, which revealed that it had sold 3 of the distinctive dog collars in question. Pet Pajamas provided investigators with details of the 3 customers who had bought these items. The detectives started investigating the customers and soon identified a prime suspect, John Taylor from Bramley, near the area where Leanne was last seen. Taylor's name had previously come up during the investigation when Leanne's body was found. At the time, witnesses reported that Taylor was frequently seen in the woods with his dog. By the time investigators prepared to question Taylor, he had already stated that his dog had passed away before Leanne's murder, sparking suspicion that he may have deliberately killed his pet to conceal evidence. At first glance, John Taylor seemed like a regular person. He was a 45-year-old man working as a delivery driver for Parcel Force, a division of the Royal Mail. He had no serious criminal history except for one instance when he stole a suit as a 15-year-old. He was previously married, with the couple having 2 children, a son in 1981 and a daughter in 1983, before they got a divorce in 1996. He appeared to be living a solitary and unassuming life in a modest house on Cockshot Drive, Bramley, Leeds. Taylor's neighbors consider him a normal person, but he enjoys causing pain to animals. He would hunt and torture rabbits, stab foxes, and bludgeon pheasants to death. In 1982, Taylor started breeding dogs and ferrets at his home on Cockshot Drive, which led to a buildup of animal waste. The smell eventually became unbearable for his wife, Janet, who had always taken pride in their home. Janet could no longer tolerate the situation and filed for divorce. Taylor frequently traveled around the country, not for work but to meet women he had contacted online. He often uses the internet to find female friends online and often has sex with them. Investigators later tracked down some of these women through Taylor's phone records and interviewed them. While most described him as harmless, some admitted to having called the police to report him as a suspect after the discovery of Leanne's body. Two women, in particular, described Taylor as someone who enjoyed violence during intimate encounters. He even told one woman that he had a desire to have sex with her daughter. A former girlfriend of Taylor's ended their relationship due to his fascination with bondage. She reported that Taylor would restrain her hands with cable ties and cover her face with scarves. When questioned by investigators, she described Taylor's method of restraint, which involved using a bundle of cable ties stored in his bedside drawer. He would bind her wrists with 2 cable ties and then connect them behind her back with a 3rd tie. This technique was eerily similar to the way Leanne's body was found, and the details had not been publicly disclosed. 10 months after Leanne's disappearance, Taylor was arrested and brought in for questioning. A warrant was issued for his DNA and a search of his property. The police immediately cordoned off his house on Cockshot Drive and conducted a thorough search of the premises. In the backyard, they discovered a hedge plant, a plum tree, and a poplar tree. Pollen from these plants was found on Leanne's hair, skin, and nasal tract, indicating that she had been at the location before her death. During the search, police excavated the garden and found the remains of various animals, including 28 ferrets buried in a mass grave and the skeletons of 4 dogs. One of the dogs, a tan and black terrier, had a crushed skull. It is possible that Taylor killed his dog to conceal his identity after learning that the police were looking for a suspect with a dog. Forensic tests revealed that the hairs found on Leanne's body matched those of the tan and black terrier. Investigators gathered crucial evidence linking Taylor to Leanne's murder inside the house. A closer examination of the floorboards revealed paint carpet fibers caught on nails, which matched the fibers found on Leanne's body. Additionally, a blood stain belonging to Leanne was discovered under the floorboards. The twine used to tie the bin liners around Leanne's body was identified as part of a unique batch produced by a manufacturer in Devon, specifically designed for making rabbit-catching nets. A matching batch was found in Taylor's home. Further investigation revealed a stash of yellow zip ties in Taylor's house, which were manufactured by an Italian company exclusively for the Royal Mail. As Taylor worked for Parcel Force, a division of Royal Mail, it was easy for him to obtain these ties. A nail in John's kitchen had the same type of garbage bag wrapped around it, adding to the evidence. 3 large freezers were also found on the property, although their significance was not immediately clear. Initially, Taylor denied knowing Leanne or being involved in her murder. However, when giving evidence, Taylor admitted to kidnapping Leanne but insisted her death was an accident. He claimed that Leanne died from a fall that hit her head. According to investigators, Leanne's death did not occur as a result of a fall, as claimed by Taylor. In reality, Taylor attacked Leanne from behind while she was walking alone on the unlit path of Holly Gill. There were no eyewitnesses, but a stifled scream was reported. Investigators concluded that Taylor then strangled Leanne and bound her hands with cable ties, resulting in her death. In 2002, John Taylor, 46, was found guilty of murdering and kidnapping Leanne. He received 2 life sentences and will be eligible for parole after 20 years. After his conviction, investigators discovered that Taylor had committed previous crimes. Once his DNA was added to the police database, they matched him to 2 old assault cases. One assault occurred on October 18, 1988. A 32-year-old woman was attacked while walking to pick up her kids from school on Holly Gill. Taylor was masked and carried a knife. Another attack happened on March 1, 1989, when Taylor entered a Bramley house through force, masked and with a knife. He dragged a 21-year-old mother into her bedroom and attacked her. He also stripped, blindfolded, and gagged her, while her 18-month-old daughter cried in the next room. The investigation into Leanne's murder showed a clear calculation in the disposal of her body. After her murder, Taylor kept her body in his kitchen freezer. In the years following Leanne's case, police conducted a nationwide review of similar cold cases. In 2018, the full extent of John Taylor's heinous crimes came to light when he confessed to a series of vile acts committed against 5 women between 1977 and 1996. One of these incidents involved holding a knife to the throat of a pregnant woman and forcing her to perform a degrading act. Another incident occurred in 1977, just before Christmas, when he assaulted a barmaid. Taylor pleaded guilty to these attacks and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He is currently serving his sentence at Wakefield Prison, a maximum security facility notorious for housing infamous and violent offenders. Many questions remain about the extent of Taylor's crimes, including how many more murders and assaults he may have committed and how far back his crimes date. It is also unclear how he managed to evade capture for so long. Detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Julie Minogue. Julie Minogue was born on July 19, 1982, in Goshen, New York, a charming town where she was raised by her loving parents, Gerald Minogue and Sandra Barish Doper. She grew up with a sister, Allison Barati Corcoran, and a brother, Peter Gerald Minogue. Throughout her school years, Julie excelled academically at Monroe Woodbury schools, ultimately graduating from Monroe Woodbury High School. She continued her education at Orange County Community College, expanding her knowledge and embracing new experiences. After completing her education, Julie Minogue became a dedicated medical assistant at Coastal Obstetrics and Gynecology in Connecticut. Julie prioritized an active lifestyle, enjoying running and walking to stay energized. She had 2 sons, Nicholas Keith Turner and Sean Michael Turner. Although the details about her marriage and husband are unknown, she has a strong bond between her and her sons. Julie Minogue found love again in 2017 with Ewan Anthony DeWitt from Roxbury. Together, they welcomed a son, Luke Anthony Minogue, in 2019. However, their relationship eventually fell apart, causing them to divorce. In 2021, she moved into an apartment on Salem Walk in Milford with her sons, putting their happiness first. By 2022, Julie's eldest son, Nicholas, was 21 and had bravely served in the Coast Guard. Her middle son, Sean, was a 17-year-old high school senior. Luke, her youngest son with Ewan, was 3 years old and brought joy to their household. Julie was 40, and life seemed to be going well for her and her 3 boys. However, tragedy struck her family. On the night of December 6, 2022, 17-year-old Sean Minogue was awoken by terrifying screams. At first, he thought the noise was an echo from the neighbor's house, but the crying became louder. Realizing something was terribly wrong, Sean rushed downstairs, concerned for his mother's safety. As he descended into the darkness, he caught a man wielding an axe, and his mother lying on the floor, covered in blood. Amidst the chaos, Sean heard the haunting words, "You didn't believe me," echoing in his mind. Sean quickly ran upstairs, locked his door, and called 911 to report the incident. He placed a chair behind the locked door and opened his window to seek help. Shortly after, he could hear the sound of sirens and people approaching. When he heard the police voice, he mistakenly thought there was an intruder, so he jumped out the window. The officers found the frightened teenager and ensured his safety. Meanwhile, police officers entered the kitchen and discovered Julie Minogue lying on the floor in a pool of blood. Her face and skull had severe cuts. A large axe was found on the stove, indicating the severity of the crime. In the living room, Julie's 3-year-old son Luke was found sitting on the couch, seemingly in shock. He was unresponsive, neither crying nor speaking. An officer stayed with Luke and provided comfort until more police officers arrived at the scene. Following Julie's tragic death, her body was taken to the medical examiner's office for a thorough examination. After a meticulous autopsy, the medical examiner determined that the cause of her death was the severe chopped wounds and impact injuries to her head, torso, and extremities. The detailed findings have provided vital evidence about the attack and the cause of her death. As the police took custody of the evidence they found on the gas stove, they conducted a thorough search of the area to look for any potential evidence that could lead them to the perpetrator. They searched every inch of the house, examining each room for any clues that could shed light on the crime. The investigation attracted the attention of concerned neighbors who gathered nearby. They was eager to support the investigation in any way they could. A neighbor gave evidence with camera footage from outside his home at the Longmeadow complex. Police have investigated the footage, hoping it will provide vital clues. As they watched, they witnessed a person walking with an axe, closely matching the description Sean had provided. The police then began searching for the identity of the man with the axe. On December 6, 2022, a major breakthrough occurred when a woman called the police to report a phone call she received from her son. With a shaky voice, she shared the shocking revelation that her son had just told her that he had killed his girlfriend. The seriousness of her words prompted an immediate response from law enforcement. They quickly located the woman and engaged her in conversation. During the conversation, police discovered that the man responsible for the disturbing confession was Ewan, a 42-year-old man who had previously been in a relationship with Julie. With this important information, the police made efforts to contact Ewan. However, Ewan abruptly hung up the call. To better understand Ewan's background, the police investigated his history. Ewan was born in 1979 in Roxbury. He had a wide range of interests and pursuits. A skilled athlete, he was passionate about ice hockey and even played in semi-professional leagues. Ewan also holds a bachelor's degree in history from Siena College. Not satisfied with just one career, he also pursued a career as a firefighter, showing his ambition. In 2006, Ewan DeWitt's life took a tumultuous turn when he was arrested in Connecticut for driving under the influence and traffic offenses. After pleading guilty, he was given a suspended prison sentence and placed on probation. However, Ewan turned his life around in 2009 when he enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps. Over the course of 5 years, he distinguished himself as a skilled weapons specialist and non-commissioned officer, ultimately earning the rank of Lance Corporal. During his time in the Marines, Ewan served as a machine gunner and was part of the elite 1st Reconnaissance Battalion. A notable photo from his time in service shows him bravely operating a .50 caliber machine gun on a vehicle during a defense exercise. Ewan's leadership skills and expertise helped him become captain of the machine gun section. Ewan served multiple tours in combat zones, including Afghanistan and the Middle East, alongside his fellow Marines. His selfless dedication was highlighted in a 2015 article in the Registered Citizen. One notable incident occurred shortly after the birth of his son, when he was arrested for attacking Julie Minogue. According to reports, he threw a large object at her, destroying her phone and preventing her from calling for help. Fearing for her safety, Julie sought refuge at a neighbor's house and contacted the police. In addition, Ewan, while intoxicated, getting into a heated argument with Julie and throwing a playpen at her head, causing a serious injury. Their son witnessed this incident and provided a statement. After Ewan went to rehabilitation, Julie sought a restraining order to protect herself from his abusive behavior. The court granted her a protective order that allowed for limited contact. However, Ewan was still granted visitation rights, which created ongoing concerns for Julie and her family's safety. In addition to their personal struggles, Julie and Ewan became embroiled in a series of family court cases starting in 2021. Julie initiated proceedings by seeking child support for their son Luke. The court ruled in her favor in October 2021, ordering Ewan to provide financial support. Ewan retaliated by taking Julie to court seeking resolution on visitation rights. In an effort to mediate the situation, the court granted supervised visitation, with a further hearing scheduled for April 2023 to revisit the matter. Julie and Ewan's divorce leads to many problems. Just 3 weeks before her death, Julie took action by going to Milford Police Station on November 14, 2022. She filed a complaint against Ewan for allegedly sending her more than 200 text messages in just 2 days, violating a protective order prohibiting him from making contact. Officer Scott Nablin carefully collected evidence of the text messages from Julie Minogue's phone, which further strengthened the case against Ewan. In a statement, Julie expressed deep concern for her safety and the well-being of her children. She stated that she could no longer tolerate the abuse and was seeking protection. Julie detailed the ongoing harassment she had endured and her fear of Ewan's behavior. She mentioned that he had a history of trouble with drugs and alcohol and was worried that he might harm her. In the meantime, Julie Minogue sought a civil restraining order against Ewan. On December 1, 2022, she presented evidence to a judge, including text messages, Ewan's history of substance abuse and mental health issues, and his violent past. Julie expressed concern for Ewan's well-being and emphasized the need for him to receive therapy. She believed Ewan posed a threat to others and should not be allowed to interact with anyone until he received proper treatment. The judge granted Julie a no-contact restraining order on December 1, 2022, to protect her from Ewan. The police investigation focused on Ewan, and they thoroughly searched the area around the Salem Walk condominium. They also visited a dive bar on Ocean Avenue in West Haven, asking patrons for help and providing information about the ongoing investigation. They asked anyone who saw Ewan to contact the authorities. Soon after, witnesses discovered someone resembling Ewan. They immediately alerted the police, who then observed the suspect entering a food truck in a nearby parking lot. Police quickly surrounded the truck and apprehended Ewan without any resistance. During the interrogation, Ewan initially remained silent, but after hours of intense interrogation, he finally confessed to killing Julie with an axe. He admitted to entering her house through the kitchen window, hiding and waiting for her to arrive. When Julie entered the kitchen, Ewan attacked her with an axe. Julie's son, Nicholas, witnessed the terrifying scene as he came downstairs. Frightened, Ewan dropped the axe on the gas stove and fled. The details of the incident, as revealed by Ewan, sent shockwaves through the investigation and provided a disturbing account of the events that occurred that night. During Ewan's first court appearance on December 7, 2022, Assistant State's Attorney Alana Paul updated the judge on the case. She said that Ewan confessed to the crime, but even if he did not, the evidence against him was compelling. Given the severity of the case, Paul argued that a significant sentence was necessary. Judge Odin Grogan set Ewan DeWitt's bond at $5 million due to concerns about his history of ignoring court orders and the need to prioritize public safety. As a result, Ewan was placed under surveillance. A hearing was scheduled for December 14, 2022, to further address the case. On December 14, 2022, Ewan faced multiple charges, including murder, violating a protective order, violating a restraining order, risking injury to a minor, and reckless endangerment. These charges aim to hold Ewan accountable for the full scope of his actions. A hearing for his pending cases was set for April 6, 2023. The family of the victim has released a statement, vowing to take action and hold accountable those who failed to protect their loved one. They hope that this case will lead to improved safeguards for individuals experiencing domestic violence and abuse. The family is committed to creating positive change and preventing similar tragedies from happening in the future. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sarah Johnson. In the quiet town of Bellevue, Idaho, a typical Tuesday morning on September 2, 2003, turned into a chaotic scene. At 6:20 a.m., residents were jolted by the sound of gunshots, followed by the wailing of sirens as sheriff's deputies from Blake County rushed to the Johnson residence. Inside the house, officers found a gruesome scene. Diane Johnson had been shot once in the head and was found in bed, while her husband Alan Johnson lay dead on the floor, having been shot once in the chest. A 16-year-old girl named Sarah was left shaken but unharmed after a traumatic event. As detectives investigated the scene, they discovered surprising secrets that ultimately led to a stunning discovery. But who had Sarah's parents, Diane and Alan, wronged, and what series of events led to their heartbreaking deaths? A frantic 911 call was made after a neighbor reported a horrific crime. The caller stated that a 16-year-old girl, Sarah Johnson, had arrived at her doorstep, frantically screaming that her parents had been shot. The caller reported hearing 2 gunshots. According to the neighbor, Kim, Sarah had run to her house in a state of panic, claiming that her parents, Diane and Alan Johnson, had been murdered. The police and emergency responders were immediately dispatched to the scene. Upon arrival, law enforcement officials entered the house and were met with a disturbing scene. They found Diane, 52, in bed with a fatal gunshot wound to her head. It appeared that she had been killed while she was asleep. The walls and ceiling near the headboard were splattered with blood, and a fragment of her skull was found on the floor. Alan's body was found on the floor beside Diane's side of the bed. He was wearing only a towel, and a large pool of blood had formed around him. Initially, police thought they had a clear-cut murder-suicide case. However, as they took a closer look at the crime scene, their theory quickly unraveled. At the scene, investigators noticed the sound of running water and followed the trail of blood to the adjacent bathroom. The shower was still on. Once they turned off the water, they observed blood splatter on the walls and a single bullet hole in the shower wall. The officers then expanded their search of the house for more evidence. In the bedroom where Diane's body was found, investigators discovered what they believed to be the murder weapon, a .264 caliber Winston rifle, on the floor. At the foot of the bed, 2 kitchen knives were also discovered. Another knife was found on the bed of the Johnson's son, Matt. The placement of these knives baffled investigators. The presence of the knives at the scene raised many questions. It was unclear why they were placed in such a deliberate manner and what significance they held. A further peculiarity was the lack of forced entry, which suggested that the killer may have been someone familiar with the family's habits. Specifically, the fact that the Johnsons rarely locked their doors, a detail known only to those close to them, seemed particularly relevant. Additionally, the house showed no signs of having been ransacked, which contradicted the possibility of a robbery gone wrong. Sarah told police she was asleep when she heard a gunshot. She immediately got up and ran to her parents' bedroom to call out for her mother. That's when she heard a second gunshot. Fearful for her safety, Sarah rushed to her neighbor's house for help. She didn't see the person who fired the shots. Her neighbor, Kim Richards, backed up Sarah's account and was the one who called 911. On the property was a separate guest house that belonged to a family friend, 45-year-old Mel Spiegel. As investigators entered the house, they discovered a crucial piece of evidence on the bed, the scope from the rifle found at the crime scene. However, Mel Spiegel was unexpectedly absent. His sudden disappearance raised suspicions, making him a person of interest for the investigators. Sergeant Walt Femling ordered the property sealed off and instructed officers to stop the waste disposal truck from collecting trash. A critical piece of evidence was nearly collected and taken away, but a deputy intervened just in time, stopping the truck just a house away. The theory was that Mel had a confrontation with Alan and Diane, which escalated into a violent argument, resulting in their deaths. As investigators explored this possibility, forensic teams searched the trash cans and found additional evidence. Inside a bundled-up pink bathrobe, they discovered a latex glove, a single brown leather glove matching the one found in the Johnsons' bedroom, and ammunition for a .25 caliber gun. The evidence was carefully tagged and sent for DNA testing. As investigators pieced together their own scenario, it became clear that the killer likely had prior knowledge of the Johnsons' unlocked doors and the trash collection schedule. It was possible that the killer disposed of the evidence in the trash before fleeing the scene after the double homicide. Mel was located in Boise, Idaho. He voluntarily met with investigators at the Boise police station. The investigators inquired about Mel's activities earlier that day, and Mel stated that he had spent the weekend with his family. He was planning to return to Bell in a week. To verify Mel's alibi, investigators contacted his family members, who confirmed that he was indeed with them. During the conversation, Mel discussed his relationship with Alan and Diane, explaining that he had rented the guest house from they for years. Mel described his relationship with they as close and very good. When questioned about the rifle used in the murders, Mel acknowledged that it was his, but claimed it had been stored in his closet before he left for Boise over the weekend. Investigators then inquired about potential enemies of they. Mel shared that Alan and Diane had been concerned about their daughter Sarah's relationship with 19-year-old Bruno Santos, who was allegedly living in the country without proper documentation and selling drugs. Mel specifically mentioned Bruno Santos as someone investigators should look into. Mel encouraged investigators to talk to other family members, leading them to reconstruct the Johnson family's history. Here's what they discovered. Alan and Diane Johnson's relationship began in the early 1980s. At the time, Diane was a single mother to a toddler son, Matt, from a previous relationship. They got married in 1983, and Alan adopted Matt as his own son. The family settled in a beautiful home in the quiet city of Bell, Idaho. In 1987, they welcomed a new addition, a daughter named Sarah Johnson, born on January 25. Their children, Matt and Sarah, were both doing well in their studies. Matt, who was 22 at the time, was a university student at the University of Idaho in Moscow. Sarah was not only excelling in her schoolwork, but was also an accomplished athlete on her school's volleyball team and received adoring attention from her father Alan. The investigators had been ruling out potential suspects and were about to reveal underlying family conflicts that had been escalating over the past few months. With Mel cleared as a suspect, the Johnson family was known to be happy and loving, but things changed when Sarah started dating Bruno Santos. Investigators interviewed the family members, including Matt, the son who had returned home from university, and Diane's sister and brother-in-law, Linda and Jim Fave. All of them described the family life as happy and normal until Sarah and Bruno became a couple. According to Matt, Linda, and Jim, Sarah's relationship with Bruno caused significant tension in the family, which escalated over the months leading up to the murder. Sarah resisted her parents' rules, particularly when they forbade her from seeing Bruno again. Despite this, she continued to defy them. Jim revealed to investigators that Bruno had a potential motive to murder Diane and Alan. A few days before the murders, Alan and Diane had discovered that Sarah had lied about sleeping over at a friend's house. In reality, she had spent the night with Bruno. Alan informed Jim about the situation and asked him to join them in confronting Bruno. Jim informed investigators that Alan was enraged and threatened to report Bruno to the police for assaulting underage Sarah. The three then left together. A charge of this severity could result in Bruno's deportation. After hearing Jim's account, investigators suspected that Bruno had a strong motive to harm the Johnsons. They decided it was time to speak with Bruno. Santos County Police were familiar with Bruno Santos, a high school dropout with a history of minor drug-related offenses. When questioned, Bruno became confrontational and arrogant, making it challenging for investigators to deal with him. During questioning, Bruno claimed he had recently proposed to Sarah and she had accepted. It's thought that Bruno made this claim to demonstrate his love for Sarah and prove that he wouldn't have done anything to harm their relationship. When investigators inquired about his whereabouts on the morning of the murders, Bruno said he was sleeping on the couch at his residence. He suggested that officers contact his mother, who confirmed that she was also at home with him at the time. Despite this, his alibi was not considered particularly solid. When investigators questioned Bruno about the murders of Alan and Diane Johnson, Bruno expressed his hatred for Alan and Diane Johnson. Bruno was initially the prime suspect because of his obvious motive. He was angry with the Johnson family, especially Diane, Sarah's mother. By killing the Johnsons, Bruno hoped to be with Sarah. The investigation into Bruno's involvement in the Alan and Diane Johnson murders took a significant step forward when a search warrant was executed at his home. As a result, the clothing and shoes he wore on the day of the incident were seized for forensic testing. Additionally, Bruno's fingerprints were taken to compare with any prints found at the crime scene. A DNA sample was also collected from Bruno at the hospital, along with hair clippings and scrapings from his hands. Based on the evidence gathered, Bruno was identified as the primary suspect in the murders of Alan and Diane Johnson. Despite thorough investigation, forensic experts found no evidence linking Bruno to the crime scene. Neither Diane's nor Alan's blood was found on Bruno's clothes or shoes, and no DNA, hair, or fingerprints from the accused were detected near the bodies. Additionally, no physical evidence placed Bruno in their room. The gloves and bathrobe tested negative for any incriminating evidence. The crime scene yielded no DNA or fingerprints from Bruno, and no blood or DNA from the victims was found on his clothing. Bruno was eventually ruled out as a suspect in the case. As investigators took a closer look, their attention turned to someone else. They began to question Sarah's family and friends more thoroughly about her home life and personal relationships. This led to the discovery that Sarah had been prescribed antidepressants and that her relationship with her parents was strained. Her family members had initially dismissed her behavior as typical for a teenager, assuming she was going through a normal phase of rebellion and testing boundaries with her parents. Linda, Sarah's aunt, grew increasingly suspicious of her niece's behavior in the aftermath of her parents' deaths. She reported to investigators that Sarah was not exhibiting the typical signs of grieving and instead seemed more focused on returning to her normal routine with friends and school. Sarah showed little emotional response to the loss of her parents, which Linda found unusual and even alarming. Her reactions seemed remarkably detached and strange. This raised more questions, prompting investigators to speak with some of Sarah's friends to gather more insight into her behavior following the tragic events. It was clear to everyone that Sarah did not show enough concern about the deaths of Alan and Diane Johnson. In fact, she seemed more focused on her own appearance, particularly getting her nails painted. What struck investigators as unusual, however, was Sarah's reaction to Bruno's arrest. Instead of being angry, she appeared to be worried about him, which seemed odd given that he was suspected of killing her parents. This remark led investigators to consider Sarah as a potential suspect, the most worrying aspect being that Sarah could commit such a heinous crime. The Johnsons' home remained an active crime scene, with investigators now focusing on Sarah's room as a second key area of interest. A question had arisen about how the blood splatter had traveled such a distance. To address this, a gun expert was brought in to examine the splatter pattern more closely. After analyzing the trajectory from Alan and Diane's room to Sarah's, the expert determined that both bedroom doors were open at the time of the shooting. This conclusion was supported by the presence of blood deposits on the back edge of Sarah's door, where the hinges are located, suggesting that the door was open, allowing the projectile to enter her bedroom. This meant that both bedroom doors, as well as Sarah's door, were open and there was a hallway in between. During the investigation, plumbers were called to the scene to address a clogged toilet in one of the bathrooms. The clog was found to be caused by a shower cap. As a result, investigators decided to question Linda, Matt, and Mel Spiegel about some of the evidence they had discovered. Both Matt and Linda identified a pink bathrobe as belonging to Sarah. Mel Spiegel confirmed that Sarah had a key to the guest house. He also revealed that Sarah was aware of the gun stored in the closet. However, investigators faced a challenge in linking Sarah to the evidence. Eyewitnesses reported that Sarah did not have any visible blood on her when she ran to a neighbor's house for help on the morning of the murders. Forensic experts used luminol to test Sarah's clothes for blood splatter, but found none. Despite this, investigators obtained a warrant to seize and test the clothes Sarah was wearing that morning. Meanwhile, investigators asked Sarah to return for another interview to determine if her account had changed since they last spoke. They had noticed small inconsistencies in her previous statements. When questioned again, investigators found that Sarah's story had altered significantly. Specifically, they identified at least 5 changes to her explanations. In some instances, she claimed to have been asleep and was awoken by the sound of a gunshot, but her story varied across different interviews. When questioned about the door to her parents' room, Sarah struggled to recall whether it was open or closed at the time of the shooting. Despite Sarah's inconsistencies, investigators maintained a calm demeanor during questioning to avoid raising her suspicions. They were already aware that both bedroom doors were open, which was the only explanation for the blood splatter on Sarah's bedroom wall. As part of the investigation to clear her name, Sarah was asked to provide a DNA sample, hair samples, and hand scrapings, all of which were sent to the lab for testing. The pajama top and bottom she was wearing on the morning of the murders were also sent to the lab for examination by forensic specialist Rod Engard. Under a high-powered microscope, Engard found no blood on the front of the robe. However, on the back of the garment, he discovered patterns of high-velocity blood splatter. These stains were extremely small, some even smaller than a pencil mark, and were layered on top of each other, indicating a high-energy impact. He discovered blue cotton fibers and green paint specks on the inside of the robe that matched the shirt Sarah wore that morning. However, the most incriminating evidence was yet to come. Lab results confirmed that Sarah's DNA was found on the inner lining of the latex glove, and gun residue was detected on both pairs of the brown leather gloves. The robe, leather gloves, and latex gloves were sent to a lab in Chicago, Kahn and Associates, for further analysis. The lab found gunshot residue on all 3 items. The blood on the gloves and robe belonged to both Alan and Diane. This evidence was sufficient for investigators to arrest and charge Sarah with the double homicide of Alan and Diane Johnson on October 29, 2003. Sarah Johnson was arrested for the murders of her parents, Alan and Diane Johnson, and was held without bail at the Blake County Jail awaiting trial. The shocking crime made headlines across the country, captivating the nation's attention and sparking a media frenzy. To build a case against Sarah, investigators and prosecutors had to create a convincing argument that demonstrated her motivation and capability to commit such a horrific crime. Sarah's parents disapproved of her relationship with Bruno from the start. As a result, Sarah began sneaking around behind their backs and acting out in typical teenage fashion. However, the turning point came just a few days before the murders. A heated argument with her parents drove Sarah to desperation. She had lied about staying with a friend, when in reality she was with Bruno. Her father's threats to have Bruno charged with assault and deported to Mexico pushed Sarah to the edge. Investigators and prosecutors believe that this was the moment Sarah hatched a plan to eliminate her parents and start a new life with Bruno. On the morning of the murders, she went to the guest house to retrieve the rifle, setting the events in motion. Sarah carefully prepared herself to commit the crime by putting on latex gloves, leather gloves, and a shower cap to prevent blood from getting on her hair and clothes. She then went to her parents' room, where she shot her mother, Diane, in the head while she was asleep. When her father, Alan, got out of the shower and opened the bathroom door, Sarah shot him in the chest. After killing her parents, Sarah attempted to make it look like an intruder had committed the crime by placing knives in the bedrooms. She then gathered up the evidence and threw it away in the trash, hoping that the waste disposal company would collect it before investigators could find it. However, she made a critical mistake by not considering the evidence that would be found in her own room. Additionally, the shower cap she had worn became lodged in a plumbing system, leaving behind a crucial piece of evidence. The evidence against Sarah Johnson was overwhelming, and her trial began in February 2005, 2 years after her parents' murders. At 18 years old, Sarah stood accused of killing her parents. Her defense team maintained that Sarah was innocent and that an intruder had committed the crime. However, the prosecution was well prepared to present their case. They introduced physical evidence found at the crime scene and testimonies from family and friends that raised suspicions about Sarah's behavior. On the morning of the murders, there were 3 people in the Johnson household: Alan, Diane, and Sarah. 2 of them did not survive. The one person who did come out alive was Sarah Johnson, who was now sitting in the courtroom. The most damaging testimony came from Bruno Santos, who not only sought to clear his own name in the murder trial but also provided the jury with insight into Sarah's state of mind before the murders. Bruno testified that he and Sarah had planned to get married and that she had described a future where they would live together in a beautiful house, happy with just each other. He also revealed that Sarah frequently expressed her hatred for her father and even talked about shooting him. After 5 weeks of testimony, evidence, and explanations of the crime scene, the jury delivered its verdict on March 16, 2005. Sarah, 18, was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole at the Pocatello Women's Correctional Center in Idaho. Despite making multiple appeals to reduce her sentence, Sarah remains in custody as all her appeals have been denied. Following her sentencing, her family members have publicly expressed their feelings about Sarah and her actions. The murders of Alan and Diane have had a devastating impact on their family, with most members believing that Sarah is responsible and deserves her punishment. Sarah's brother, Matt, has stated that Sarah showed no remorse for killing their parents and believes that if given a second chance, she would try to avoid being caught again. At the sentencing hearing, Pat Dishman, Diane's mother, addressed Sarah directly. She told her granddaughter that despite everything, they still loved her. However, her actions had left a devastating impact on their entire family. "We've been absolutely destroyed by the loss of your Alan and Diane, and it was even harder to come to terms with the fact that it was you who did it." Alan's sister Lynn expressed her concerns about Sarah's character, stating that she is spoiled and violent, and capable of committing murder if released from prison. Lynn urged the judge to consider keeping Sarah incarcerated permanently.